Well, you were just watching and listening to Dame Priti Patel launching her Tory leadership campaign. Quite a slick operation there, quite a confident performance, talking a lot about how important campaigning is, how important uniting the party is, the parliamentary party, the membership, the country, etc., etc. She wants to get the party back to its winning ways. Apparently, she's also got merchandise on sale, T-shirts, Priti for the job, unite behind Priti, unite to win, baseball caps too on offer for those who are interested. So that was Priti Patel launching her leadership campaign there. Now, you are watching Good Afternoon Britain, just with me, Emily Carver, this afternoon. Tom will be back next week. But joining us now is our political reporter, Catherine Forster, who's been listening in to that campaign launch. Catherine, your thoughts?
Yes, good afternoon, Emily. Well, quite rousing, wasn't it? And certainly went down very, very well in the hall. She managed to paint quite a positive picture, despite the fact that, of course, the party was decimated at the last election. And, she said that the Conservatives are the greatest political party in the world. Now, certainly they have up to now been the most successful, but of course it won't feel like that to them at the moment. I thought it was interesting just how much time she spent talking about the work that the grassroots do, the membership. She's very, very popular with them, very keen on promising them that if she becomes leader, she will listen to them more, she will build up local government, she will give them more power. She says that they will get to elect the party chairman. She also said that she would reform the parliamentary party selection process because there was a lot of anger in the run-up to the last general election, how quite a number of Conservative candidates seemed to be parachuted in from on high. Richard Holden, who managed to take Basildon and Billericay in Essex by 20 votes. There was a lot of anger there. He was not their chosen candidate. So a real play to the members. She's popular with the members and not much really on what she would do in terms of her vision for the country if she becomes leader. A lot about sort of internal processes, etc. Of course, she's saying she's going to return to clear Conservative values. Freedom of speech, freedom to spend your money as you will. She highlighted her experience, her record, both in government, of course, as Home Secretary, but also in the Department for Work and Pensions and in DFID as well. And also the fact that, sure, her parliamentary career began in 2010, but saying that she'd started as a public servant some 40 years ago, going out on her bike to check on people connected with her parents' shop. So I think it went down very, very well in the hall. She's currently not one of the favourites, but I do think too that this leadership contest is pretty open in a way that perhaps previous ones have not been.
Yes, it's interesting what you say about her going down so well with the membership. That really is her strength, isn't it? When she's surrounded by members in the party, she's very good at talking to them, very good at, encouraging them to get out there and fight for her party. We may have to interrupt you, Catherine, just because Christopher Hope is there in the room and he may well be asking a question very shortly. But she made a few pops at the Labour Party, of course. Keir Starmer accusing him of launching a nasty financial assault on pensioners. She also made a little pop at the Reform Party, a non-conservative shade of blue, which occasionally pops up at election time, she called the party. So equal opportunities.
Yes, she did. I noticed that line. She talked about colours and that non-conservative shade of blue, obviously an oblique reference to reform. Worth saying, of course, that, she gets on very well with Nigel Farage. And, of course, it was largely because Nigel Farage came along with reform. Reform took so many votes that the Conservatives ended up with as few seats as they did, because if you add together the vote share for Conservatives and Reform, that totals more than the vote share of Labour. But she has made it clear that there's no way under her leadership that she will be welcoming Nigel Farage into the Conservative Party. And of course, Nigel Farage has said he wants nothing to do with them and he wants to destroy them. So that's interesting. But yeah, lots of digs too at Labour, the new Labour government. And one of the phrases that struck me most, she accused him of trash talking Britain. She mentioned the speech in the Rose Garden the other day. She said it was feeble, it was pitiful, and rot and corruption. She talked about the cronyism allegations. And she did manage, despite the fact that the country doesn't feel in a good place to many people at the moment, and didn't when the Tories were in power, and that's largely why they lost, painted a positive vision of Britain, saying, you know, I don't recognise this downbeat assessment of Labour. I see a great country, you know, we're not called Great Britain for nothing. The vaccine rollout, we're world leaders in AI and fintech. Look at our athletes, how well we did. She was good, I think, at giving a positive vision. I was at a Tom Tugendhat event yesterday, now not directly comparable because it wasn't his launch event. But he did say a lot of, you know, I realised that we got this wrong and we got that wrong and we got the other wrong, and apologising for that. There wasn't much of that from her. She seemed to want to sort of move on. But yes, she's popular with the members, but of course it will only be at the point that the numbers are whittled down to the final two that the members will get a say. Now, will MPs let her get to that point?
Yes, very interesting indeed how this contest is going so far. Christopher Hope is in the room for us, our political editor. He'll be putting a question very shortly for Priti Patel. I don't know what he's going to ask, but I imagine it might be about her record in office, perhaps at the Home Office. Lots of you getting in touch to say that Priti Patel allowed very high levels of immigration into this country. Perhaps she wasn't as effective as she might have liked to have been in that position. That is something that people will criticise her for, people who moved to Reform at the election, but also those who voted for other parties, saying actually when she was in office, Priti Patel spoke a good game, but did she actually deliver?
Yes, and I think that's a valid criticism, because she has all got this experience, which is potentially a strength, but it's also a weakness, particularly around the levels of net migration, because it was under her and Boris Johnson that, having left the European Union, where we were told, you know, we couldn't control migration because of that, the Brexit vote to take back control, including of our borders, who would have thought that the numbers would go through the roof, up to 750,000 only a year or so ago. Absolutely unprecedented in our history. Now, that was a direct result.
Catherine, I'm just going to have to butt in there.
Sure,
sorry, Catherine Forster. We're just going to head over back to the room where Christopher Hope.
Dame Priti, Christopher Hope, GBNews. You're seen as the most right-wing candidate of the 6 candidates to replace Rishi Sunak. You're proud of your grassroots Conservative base, but you won't apologise for record net migration under your government's watch. You didn't vote against the smoking ban when you had a chance to. How can you reconcile and win back Reform voters from that position? And if you were Prime Minister, would you remove a portrait of Tony Blair?
Margaret Thatcher's going straight back on the rule. Let me just get that on the record first of all. Well, look, number one, I'm not going to play that game of soundbite politics. You've just heard me also give a speech about freedom and Conservative values and beliefs. And Chopper, you know, when it comes to freedom, it's freedom as to how we live our lives. You've also seen what I've said in recent days around the smoking ban, what that is going to mean actually for businesses. For pubs, the hospitality sector, I think just before the general election, I was spending a lot of time with the hospitality sector, not just in my own constituency, but elsewhere. The other point just to say on this issue is that we've got a government that wants the police, the very people that should be policing our streets, to be policing beer gardens and things of that nature. In my view, we need the police on the streets, not in beer gardens. They need to be doing their job. And, you know, this is exactly where we need to unpick this awful Labour government. BBC, Harry?
Thank you, Harry Farley from BBC News. You talk about losing the confidence.
OK, well, there you go. Christopher Hope putting his question on Priti Patel's record on immigration. How is she going to win back Reform voters? Also on whether she'd remove Tony Blair from the wall there. And also a question, too, on, well, tobacco plans. And she said police should be on the streets, not policing beer gardens. So there you go. We're going to catch up with Christopher Hope very shortly after the break. And also we're going to reflect on the astounding number of non-UK nationals who are neither in employment nor looking for work in this country. How does that add up?
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Recently, the cartoons that inspired the Bond films have been gifted to the Oscars archive. I'm joined now by John's son, Sean McCluskey. Very good to see you. Welcome to GB News.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have any memory of your dad doing these strip cartoons?
Well, many memories. Yeah, we grew up with my father working at a pace. He had to turn in one strip every day, apart from Sundays. So he was always working at the house, and always taking reference material. He had models dropping in to shoot them with his camera. You'd go out in the garden and there'd be a guy with a machine gun and he'd be taking photos of him, things like that. Nice memories.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
What would you say about the way he characterised James Bond?
Fleming was very wary that his highbrow art was going to be somehow diminished by turning it into a strip cartoon in a newspaper, but he met with Fleming, and Fleming had a drawing made of what he wanted Bond to look like, and it was very old-fashioned, very sort of military. And my father kind of, you know, jostled a little bit and came through with a much younger, much more lithe character. And through the first few strips, he moved Bond into a contemporary man, very much part of the 60s, and styled him in that way. And I think there's a lot of rumour that Sean Connery got the gig because he looked a lot like the drawings, because it's hard to believe now, but the strip was billboard advertised across the country.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Right, so shortly we are going to be crossing to Christopher Hope, who was in the room, who put that question to Priti Patel at her leadership campaign launch. Priti Patel swerved some of those answers on her record on immigration when she was in the Home Office. She did make a joke about putting Margaret Thatcher straight back up on the wall. I also want to tell you that we're going to be discussing a story about Jess Phillips, Labour's Jess Phillips. Apparently, she told an audience that she received preferential treatment in an NHS hospital in Birmingham because of her stance on the Gaza ceasefire. So we're going to be getting to that shortly as well. But now, we have got a new record in the United Kingdom. Currently, there are 1.6 million migrants living in Britain who are unemployed or not actively looking for work. Now, this has been estimated estimated to be costing the taxpayer £8 billion. This comes as the Institute for Government is asking Labour to consider loosening immigration policy to meet ambitious house-building targets. So is it time to bring in skilled migrants to fuel Angela Rayner's house-building boom? Well, joining me now is international security and border control expert Henry Bolton. I mean, Henry, some of these figures out today are quite shocking. They come from the Centre for Migration Control. They're saying that a record number of non-UK nationals in this country are neither working nor looking for employment, and that it could be costing us billions and billions of pounds. Your take?
Yeah, I mean, it is shocking, but what we're really talking about here are people who were not born in the UK. Now, of course, that's an immigrant community, but they may have come over as spouses, as dependents, and so on, of people who have got work visas or other visas to and other reasons for a leave to remain in the United Kingdom. But the largest part of this element is the Pakistani and Bangladeshi community. And in fact, they also have the largest proportion of women who are not economically engaged at the moment. So there are all sorts of issues to unpack here, but the bottom line is that when you let somebody into the United Kingdom, you give them leave to remain, particularly if they bring with them dependents and they've got children and so on, you are inevitably going to end up with a proportion of those people who are not economically engaged or not available for work and not looking for work because they're old age, they enter old age or they whatever. Now, the question that needs to be asked is, A, as a result of that, are we bringing too many, giving too many people leave to remain in the United Kingdom? I'd argue that we are. And secondly, at what point do we actually say, because, for example, in Denmark, there's a very strict rules on when the reason you've been given leave to remain ends, you leave the country. In the United Kingdom, our rules on that are a lot more lax, liberal, if you like. And so most people who end up coming here to work end up staying and then becoming economically inactive. So there's a whole lot to unpack here. But the ultimate thing is that, again, we have paid a superficial approach to planning our immigration policy. We have not thought through any of it thoroughly.
I mean, Henry, Henry, Robert Bates, the research director at the Centre for Migration Control, he's quoted in the media today saying there is no reason for us to continue handing out so many long-term visas when we are currently having to bail out over 1 million migrants who are already in Britain not working. This is the very definition of a Ponzi scheme, and we will only compound the problem if we do not change course soon. However, a government spokesperson has said it's incorrect to apply an average cost to migrants out of work. Estimates need to take into account individual circumstances. Most education and welfare costs are not applicable to working-age migrants who are not students. So there's clearly a disagreement here on how we analyse these statistics.
I know which side of that disagreement I'm on. Look, you know, I read that statement from the government on this, from the Home Office on this. I mean, you know, it's vacuous, it's meaningless, it's you know, it's just wallpaper. It's trying to put people off. Somebody's asked for a statement and they've been given one. It's meaningless. Look, the bottom line is that this country is paying a huge amount to support immigrant communities who have ultimately entered this country in order to be economically active, or they have come in on the basis that they are associated with somebody who is going to be economically active. Now, the left will argue that, and the Open Borders Brigade will argue that these people are all contributing to the national economy. That's utter, that's for the birds. That's rubbish. Some are, but a great many aren't. And we have to factor that in. You can't just come up with some sort of wallpaper type of statement from the Home Office and expect this problem to go away. It will not. It's costing us a fortune. And Sir Keir Starmer has made it very clear that he's concerned about a black hole, which in the economy left by the Conservatives, which frankly is a black hole of his making, not the Conservatives' making.
Henry,
but this adds to it.
Just a quick word from you on the headline today that essentially Angela Rayner is being urged by yet another left-wing think tank to bring in more skilled migrants in order to boost house building. They've got these targets. So your thoughts on that?
We should be training our own people. If we've got people out of work, run schemes to teach them to be bricklayers or plasterers or plumbers. Run that sort of thing. We used to do that in this country 40, 50 years ago. It was normal. We don't do it anymore. Why not? And just, Emily, just if I may, just one other thing. I think that one of the biggest headlines at the moment is Germany saying that they are going to probably significantly rein back on benefits for migrants that have entered Germany through another EU country. Now, if they do that, then this country will become an even greater magnet for economic migrants moving through the European Union to us. We must not sit here and do nothing. We have to do the same. If we do nothing or do not cut back, we are going to be the #1 magnet in Europe for economic migrants.
Yeah. Henry, it's interesting to see how attitudes are shifting over on the continent towards border control. Germany hardening up, Sweden hardening up, Denmark, of course, too. Very interesting to watch. Henry Bolton, thank you very much indeed. International security and border control expert Henry Bolton. Let me know what you think. We heard from Yvette Cooper that what we need is more people training to be brickies. We need more people training to be construction workers, electricians, etc., etc. Yet you have think tanks urging Angela Rayner to use the lever of migration again to build the houses that we need. Your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. After the news headlines, we're going to be talking about whether, we've seen a reunion between the feuding brothers in Oasis when it comes to Oasis. Could we see the same when it comes to William and Harry? They've been together recently.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. 12:31 exactly, and the top story this lunchtime. A 13-year-old boy has died in what detectives are calling a tragic stabbing on the outskirts of Birmingham. A murder investigation is now underway after the teenager was found at a property in Oldbury yesterday afternoon. He was treated by paramedics at that house, but sadly died at the scene. The West Midlands Force say there haven't been any arrests so far. A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after the death of a child in Swansea. Police were called to a home in the town last night, and a 41-year-old who lived with the child is currently being questioned in Bridgend. Detectives there say they aren't looking for anyone else involved. Well, as we've been hearing in the last half hour or so, Dame Priti Patel has officially launched her Conservative leadership campaign. She's promising to revive the party with clear goals, and she says a focus on the future. The former Home Secretary also denounced Sir Keir Starmer's recent speech as feeble, pitiful and dishonest, criticising his approach to the trade unions, criminal justice and to the economy. Priti Patel is one of 6 candidates in the running to replace Rishi Sunak, including James Cleverly, Kemi Badenoch, Mel Stride, Robert Jenrick and Tom Tugendhat. Well, speaking in London moments ago, she declared the Conservative Party as the greatest in the world.
Under my leadership, I will bring our party experience and strength, and I will get us back to winning ways. But before I say more about my offer to members of Parliament, my plans to empower our loyal and dedicated party members, and my commitment for our party to serve the nation and the British people with professionalism and integrity.
And the government has said it won't impose a 4-day working week, but does support flexible working options. Labour says it's focused on compressed hours, allowing employees to work longer over fewer days, not though reducing total hours. The Conservatives have criticised proposals, claiming that businesses are concerned about potential costs. Those are the latest headlines from the newsroom. For now, I'm Sam Francis, back with you at 1 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello again. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's the penultimate day of meteorological summer, and there's going to be quite a summery feel to things for many of us as we go through this afternoon, because high pressure is firmly in control, and high pressure generally means settled weather, which is what we have. For most, it is going to stay dry, not for all of us. There are some showers, particularly towards the far northeast of Scotland, and some blustery winds here, but all of this will ease as we go through the day. Otherwise, though, like I said, it's looking dry, although there will be some cloud bubbling up as we go through the afternoon, perhaps becoming a bit more widespread. Still some sunshine, and in the sunshine, feeling pretty warm with temperatures up a nudge compared to yesterday. Staying mostly fine for many of us as we go through the end of the day. Still some sunshine around in places. Like I said, the showers across the far northeast of Scotland will ease as we go through the day, but a few for Orkney and Shetland continuing still as we go into the evening. Otherwise, across the rest of Scotland, lots of fine weather to be had, lots of sunshine to look forward to in between the cloud. A similar story for Northern Ireland, northern central parts of England and Wales, but perhaps towards the far south-southeast of the UK, things will start to turn a little bit cloudier, perhaps a little bit breezier as we go through this evening. Overnight, many places staying dry, and there will be clear skies for most, away from the far southeast, where we are going to see that cloud building and perhaps a few showers arriving as we head towards dawn on Saturday morning. Otherwise, and in other places with the clear skies, again, it is going to be a relatively cool night, although temperatures may be slightly higher than last night. As we go through Saturday, then a bit of cloud towards the southeast, and this is going to become a bit more widespread across central southern parts as we go through the day. And there is the risk of a few showers developing towards the south, and these could turn heavy, possibly thundery. But further north, it's staying dry with plenty of sunshine around, and again, feeling warm in the sunshine. I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There's disruption to some Calmac Firth of Clyde sailings this morning because of a technical problem. The M18 in South Yorkshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident southeast of Doncaster between junctions 3 and 4 from St Catherine's to Westmore, with delays on the A1M joining the M18. In Warwickshire, the A426 is closed along Dunchurch Road at Bilton in Rugby after an accident. In Cambridgeshire, the A428 is partly blocked between Croxton and St Neots, causing queues. In Suffolk, the A14 is partly blocked eastbound by an accident between junctions 50 and 51 from Stow Upland to Needham Market, causing delays. In Essex, the A126 is partly blocked by an accident on London Road in Grays, and in Wiltshire, the A4361 is closed each way at Winterbourne Monkton after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain with me, Emily Carver. Now, the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Sussex have both attended the funeral of their uncle, but apparently it wasn't the harmonious reunion many had hoped for. It's reported to have been a tad frosty between the two of them as they sat separately and did not talk. Now, this is reportedly the first time in a whole year that the pair have been seen in the same room together. Now, Harry did say, or at least his sources, those close to him, did say that he wasn't going to turn up to this funeral. One of the concerns was security. But we're joined now by former royal correspondent for The Sun, Charles Ray. Charles, we've seen, we've seen the Oasis brothers get back together, end their feud. But apparently this was all rather frosty. They may not have even spoken to each other at this funeral.
Well, the Oasis brothers had a frosty relationship for a great many years, and I suspect that William and Harry are going to have an even frostier relationship for a good few years yet. I mean, for people to call it a reunion, hardly that. I mean, they were at the same place. It was a funeral. They sat at the back, as I understand it. They didn't look at each other. They certainly didn't talk to each other. It doesn't bode well for the future of any hope that there's going to be any reconciliation. And you're quite right, Emily. At the beginning of the week, when Harry was spotted at the airport, there was a big thing made that he was coming to New York to attend a UN climate change meeting, which doesn't happen until next week in any case. But his people were giving indications as well that he wasn't going to attend the funeral. So we all thought, yeah, that's he's doing the right thing. He's taken any possibility of friction away from a funeral. Now, fortunately, he surprised us all. He's gone to the funeral. He's paid his last respects to his uncle. And that's it. Now Harry will be back on a plane again, I'm assuming, and heading straight back to the States.
Must have been very awkward to be sat at a funeral, to attend a funeral and not even share a word. Obviously no hug, not even a handshake, no exchange of anything. It's all terribly sad, isn't it? Do you think the whole British public have just let go of Prince Harry at this point?
I think you're right, and I think it is very sad. There is no question about how sad it is, but you know, Harry's only got himself to blame for all this, given what has gone on in the past. I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole. We all know what he said and what he did and what, you know, what...
all the catty comments in that book, all the catty comments, you know, on Netflix.
He was disrespectful to Catherine as well in various guises. That's not something a husband forgets about, you know, in the great scheme of things. So what I would like to know is, I'm assuming that there was a drink after, you know, a little bit of a wake, you know, somewhere. Did they both go to that, or did they both make their diplomatic withdrawals? I mean, I don't know, but we do know that they were definitely both there.
Yes, well, thank you very much indeed, Charles Ray, former royal correspondent for The Sun. Always great to chat with you. Thank you very much indeed.
All the best.
Now we're going to move on to something very different indeed, because Ed Miliband has reportedly bowed to Greenpeace, refusing to fight a climate lawsuit brought against two of Britain's biggest North Sea oil schemes. Now, the Energy Secretary says he won't fight the climate lawsuit against Rosebank and Jackdaw, two of Britain's biggest North Sea oil projects. This decision will put both schemes on shaky ground and at serious risk of being scrapped altogether. So has he thrown these two companies essentially under the bus? Well, we're joined by senior lecturer in sustainable construction and climate change, John Grant. John, explain what's happening here.
Well, you know, you said bowed to Greenpeace. Greenpeace have done this legal challenge because the government had kind of promised it to us that they were going to attempt to meet these 2030, 2040 and ultimately zero carbon at 2050. And you can't keep expanding your oil and gas extraction industry if you're going to make those zero carbon challenges. And, you know, so it was legally, you know, questionable. And so, you know, this government is now accepting that the challenges that it's going to meet will be much easier to be met without extracting yet more oil and gas, which, you know, in terms of the benefit to the UK, probably the workers, but the companies themselves, their profits and everything are going a great deal of distance elsewhere, and in fact they're fighting for us to even tax them with the profits that they're making.
John, should a sensible Secretary of State be siding with Greenpeace? Greenpeace, some people consider quite an extreme charitable organisation with quite extreme positions when it comes to climate change. I mean, no thought to the lost tax revenue, the lost jobs, the lost energy?
Well, yeah, and that's why I said, you know, that this is a legal challenge that he can see is legally and morally the right argument. And we are currently, by tiny increments, pushing our planet further and further towards, you know, oblivion. And the idea that we can somehow make more profits with oil and gas, and that will assist us in transitioning, when we should be pivoting and using the huge amounts of resources.
John, this is what I don't understand. If you don't want to use oil to, you know, fuel your home or fuel your car, I mean, what about all the other products, you know, that oil is used for, whether it's detergents, fertilisers, paint, plastic, all of these products, they need this resource, do they not, John Grant?
It's a good point that plastics are important for oil and for fertilisers. Natural gas is used for those. But from my point of view, what we need to focus on is the carbon emissions from burning this material. So, yes, there will always be probably a small amount of oil and gas used in those points. But it is the burning element and the release of the carbon dioxide, of which this will put a part of the 40 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide that we release every year into our atmosphere, that we need to pull back on. And as you were saying, the loss of revenue, we have an enormous resource in terms of wind, and hydro, waves, tidal, that we should be pivoting those extraordinarily skilled workers that work in the North Sea for oil and gas to a sustainable and
yeah, I know, but, you have union people saying, where are all these green jobs? We've been promised all these green jobs for years and years and years, and they aren't coming. People also questioning this big GB Energy move from Ed Miliband. It's not actually going to supply any energy. It's just going to funnel billions of taxpayers' money into projects that the government chooses are the best. Whether they'll get that right is very questionable indeed. John Grant, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave it there, but always great to talk to you. Always good to talk to you. Sorry about that. Senior Lecturer in Sustainable Construction and Climate Change. We could talk all afternoon about all of this stuff, couldn't we? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. I do worry that Ed Miliband is so ideological in this crusade towards net zero that he, shies away from some of the realities we're faced with. But anyway, we've got lots more coming up on today's show. We are going to talk about Jess Phillips, who has appeared to boast about the fact she received preferential treatment at an NHS hospital in Birmingham. Guess why? Because of her stance on the Gaza ceasefire. Go figure. And also this Margaret Thatcher portrait removed by Keir Starmer from the Thatcher room inside Number 10. Is he really that petty? Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Susie, let's start with you, and you will say that being a mum is the equivalent of a second full-time job.
Yeah, I think any mum would say that. But, it's a massive privilege to be a mother. It's a massive privilege to have children. But it's an incredible amount of work. Most people would argue that you are, it's a privilege and you don't do it for this, but actually you are contributing to the economy because you're also producing the future people that are going to go into work.
If men were doing the lion's share of the childcare as well, everyone would know about it, but women don't shout about it. They put up and get on with it. But times are changing, aren't they, Reem? And I think, there's nobody here suggesting that women need special favours, but they need to have certain understanding within the workplace. There's arguments, isn't there, for Pregnant Then Screwed, who's campaigning 100% for meritocracy, but they want to see things like flexible working so that women can work around childcare responsibilities, and they want to be able to make sure that women aren't squeezed out of the labour market because they simply can't juggle both things.
Absolutely. Look, being a mother is one of the most incredible things that any woman can do. And I think it's wonderful that so many women are able to work and have children. I think it's wonderful. I think we should have the utmost respect for every single woman that is able to balance and juggle all of that. However, I think we need to be having these conversations about how best employers can cater towards different people's needs. We want to be encouraging parents to be working as well as having children and contributing to the economy. But it is incredibly unfair if we begin to give those particular people preferential treatment in the workplace. And I think that some of their childless colleagues will begin to resent them.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. Welcome back. It is now 12:48, and the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, he's coming under fire after reports he's removed a portrait of one of his predecessors, Margaret Thatcher, of course, from Downing Street. He's said to have found the painting, commissioned by Gordon Brown, unsettling. Is this fair enough? It's his room now, is it? Or is this pure ideological pettiness? Well, we're joined by criminal barrister and former Conservative MP Jerry Hayes. I mean, what do you make of this? It wasn't too long ago that when Keir Starmer was looking for us all to vote for him, he was writing in the papers heaps of praise on Margaret Thatcher for the meaningful change she brought to the country. What's happened?
Oh, it's insane. It's petty, spiteful, unnecessary. And for heaven's sake, it is the Thatcher room whose picture you're meant to put up there. And of course, the trouble with Starmer is he doesn't know how to read the room. There are a lot of people of all parties who still, even when they disagree with her, realise that she was a great prime minister, and she deserves to have that photo. But of course, you know, he probably doesn't want to be reminded of what she actually did. She believed in sound money. She didn't make promises that she couldn't possibly afford. The other thing is, of course, she democratized the trade unions. Now, maybe it's the trade unions who don't want to be reminded of Margaret Thatcher, who stopped the wildcat strikes, who stopped these people taking over the country.
Oh, so you think maybe Mick Lynch has had a word?
Oh, absolutely, but more than a word, I suspect. I mean, Mick Lynch has just had an inflation-busting pay rise. The doctors have had an inflation-busting pay rise. I mean, it is really, really very bad news, and I think it's going to rebound on them as well. Is it going to be exiled from number 10 Downing Street? I doubt it, but it's stupid and unnecessary. He hasn't made a very good start. I mean, he's really upset, and understandably, 10 million pensions. And I don't think... Yeah, I mean,
Jerry, what does this tell us about the man, though? This is what I'm interested in. What does this tell us about Keir Starmer, the man? Because to me, it seems as though this is pointing to a very ideological, perhaps petty, also perhaps a little control freakish.
Yeah, I think Emily, you summed it in three, actually. Petty, control freak. What's the point? I mean, don't forget Gordon Brown, when he was Prime Minister, he commissioned the work. And in 2009, he actually invited Margaret Thatcher to unveil it. And he was hardly a Thatcherite fan, but he believes in the dignity of office. I'm not entirely sure that Starmer does, but you're right. It is a window into the mind of this man. And he's only been in office, well, admittedly, it's longer than Liz Truss, which is not terribly difficult. But the fact is, it doesn't look good. It looks petty and nasty and unnecessary.
Jerry, does it look sexist too? Does this look misogynistic? Are the feminists going to be up in arms about this in that respect?
Well, you know, can you imagine it the other way around? If someone in the Foreign Office removed a picture of, you know, a female Foreign Secretary, oh gosh, I can't remember her name now. She's still in the party, Margaret Beckett. Everyone would say it's sexist. You just don't remember. You don't rewrite history. And this is the problem. And I don't want to go into the wokery argument particularly, but this is the problem with the modern Starmer Labour mind. They want to rewrite history. We don't like Thatcher. We don't approve of her. Let's cancel her. Well, she won't be cancelled.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, there have been, you know, people on the Labour side of politics who have spoken very ill of Margaret Thatcher. There's a lot of hatred, isn't there? Perhaps Keir Starmer does actually share that, even though he said some positive things about her in the past, in the run-up to the election, anyway.
Well, he did. He in fact, in the run-up to the election, he admired her for her sense of mission. Those were his words. So in other words, he's doing it for a purpose. He's doing it for a purpose to appease the left wing of the party, because he knows his majority is based on sand. I think what we need to do is have a decent Conservative leader to do something about this. Well, you can't actually do too much except explain to people this is the sort of guy you've got in number 10.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Jerry Hayes, criminal barrister, former Conservative MP. Great to have you on to discuss this. Lots of you getting in touch. Paul says, does Starmer have a problem with strong women? Carol says, I'm no Thatcher fan, but by God, she deserves a place in number 10. Tom says, if you were an ex-miner, I think you'd say Starmer removing Thatcher's picture is the only good thing he's done since taking office. Well, there you go. A little bit of balance there. It does seem awfully petty to me, but I guess the counter is, it's his room now. if this picture was particularly unsettling for him, then I guess why can't he take it down? It's a free world, or is it, you know, or does this room belong to us, actually? This Thatcher room at number 10, is it ours? You should keep her up. Andy just says well, I won't read that one out. It's a little bit too rude. But coming up after the break, this is, of course, Good Afternoon Britain. We've got lots more. We're going to be checking in on Christopher Hope, who's been at the Priti Patel's leadership launch, and find out the gossip from behind the scenes. Stay with us.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey, hope you're having a good day. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. There will be plenty more fine weather to come as we go through the end of today and into tomorrow, but do watch out for some thundery showers. First off, though, high pressure still firmly in control, which is why it's been so settled today, and it's why it will continue to be settled as we go through the next 12 to 24 hours for most of us. Some cloud through this afternoon, but a lot of that will actually clear away as we go through this evening and overnight, away from the southeast, that is. Here we are going to see a bit more cloud pushing its way in, and perhaps one or two showers developing as we head towards dawn as well. Otherwise, where we have the clear skies, it is again going to be a bit of a cool night. Temperatures perhaps holding up slightly higher than last night, but nonetheless, there could be some pockets of mist and fog first thing tomorrow morning. As we go through tomorrow morning then, starting off in the southeast, and like I said, a bit more cloud here with a few showers to watch out for. A brighter picture further west, but it is going to turn cloudier later. Meanwhile, across central parts, a sunny start to the day, and similar for Northern Ireland and into Northern England and across Scotland, but there will be a few pockets of mist and fog here and there. These should clear quite quickly as we go through the day because the sun does still have some decent strength behind it, even though it is going to be the last day of meteorological summer. Otherwise, as we go through the day, staying pretty sunny across the northern two-thirds of the country. Further south, a bit more cloud building, and with that there is the risk of some thunderstorms kicking off. They're going to be pretty isolated, so you would be unlucky to catch one, but nonetheless the risk is there. Temperatures are going to be reaching highs of around low, possibly mid-20s towards the south, a few degrees cooler than this further north. Chance of a few more showers kicking off as we go through tomorrow evening and overnight. They could be a little bit impactful for some places with some intense rain, perhaps even some hail mixed in. And then the showers could become a bit more widespread, particularly across central and eastern parts on Sunday, and then some more wet weather to come as we go through early next week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Northern Opera Group performs rare and wonderful operas in imaginative ways, enabling audiences and artists to discover new works and composers from across opera's history. The group produces the annual Leeds Opera Festival, which combines new productions of rare operas with a wide range of talks, panel discussions, workshops and other events. 2024 marks the festival's 8th season, and it's set to offer the world a premiere of Northern Opera Group's latest commission, Sherlock Holmes and the Sign of Four, an interpretation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle 19th century mystery novel. It's the first ever opera adaptation of the enigmatic detective. The artistic director of the Northern Opera Group, David Ward, joins me now to tell us more. David, welcome to GB News. If this is the first time that Sherlock Holmes has been translated into opera, I'm imagining that may mean that it's quite difficult to do. Is that so?
It's certainly a creative challenge, yes, and we knew that when we started on the project. I mean, as you'll know, opera traditionally has been slower-paced stories, ones that relied on less kind of narrative drive and action. So our first challenge was actually how do we translate this kind of story into opera? So it's about looking at that musical language we use, the theatrical language, and I very much hope that we have been able to find a solution to do that. Well, it first started in 2020 when we all had a lot of time on our hands, and I finally picked up the Sherlock Holmes novels to have a read. And as I was reading them, it just struck me that these could make a fantastic opera, as well as those great theatrical set pieces. You know, you've also got a wonderful kind of cast of characters that you could have on stage. I also got really interested in this idea of how do you use music to show Sherlock's internal world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Friday, the 30th of August, and you're with me, Emily Carver. Now, Dame Priti Patel is the latest candidate to take command of the Tories, vowing to unite and revive the Conservative Party. But would she get your vote? And workless migrants. According to a new report, record numbers of migrants living in Britain are not working, potentially costing taxpayers an estimated £8 billion, with almost 1.7 million non-UK nationals either unemployed or classed as economically inactive because they're not looking for a job. And two-tier NHS. Labour's Jess Phillips reportedly claimed she received preferential treatment at an NHS hospital in Birmingham because the doctor happened to agree with her stance on a ceasefire in Gaza. And four-day week. Workers could be given the right to demand a four-day week as part of a package of measures championed by Angela Rayner. Now, Angela Rayner's been spotted elsewhere. Now, when I say Angela Rayner has been spotted elsewhere, I mean Ibiza, on the rave scene in Ibiza. I think we could show you a little clip of her. There she is, boogieing behind the DJ there with a bottle of water there, dancing around. I think it's a bottle of water anyway. She seems to be having a fantastic time. This is on Denise Van Outen's Instagram, and it's making the papers. Angela, she's well known to be a bit of a party goer, bit of a party animal. I mean, some people are saying she shouldn't be doing such things. You know, when the Prime Minister is delivering a speech about how our country is going to get worse before it gets better, a bit of a doom-laden pitch to the country. Angela's there having an absolute whale of a time. So, yes, raving in a DJ booth in Ibiza, making the most of the summer recess before it's all go next week. Please do send in your thoughts. gbnews.com/your. Say every right to dance the night away, or should she be focusing on more serious matters back at home? But it's your headlines now with Sam Francis.
Emily, thank you very much indeed, and good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 1, and the top story. This lunchtime, a murder investigation has been launched after a 13-year-old boy was stabbed to death at a house in the West Midlands. The teenager was treated by paramedics, but sadly died at the scene in Oldbury yesterday afternoon. No one has been arrested so far, and police have called his death an absolute tragedy. Local youth worker Darius Ryman told us he's in shock.
Feeling really sad, and I don't know whether to blame ourselves or our service or our government. Are we failing? It's going to be really sad for the family as well to live with that their child is not no more, and for the community as well. It's going to have a very effect on the whole of the community that it's actually come to our doorstep now, because you hear about it in other areas. Somebody's been stabbed, some child's been stabbed, some man's been stabbed. Today it's happened at our doorstep, in our area, on our street.
News from Wales, and a woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder after the death of a child in Swansea. Police there were called to a home in the city last night. A 41-year-old who lived with the child is currently being questioned in Bridgend. Detectives say at this stage they're not looking for anyone else involved. And a mother has pleaded guilty to stabbing her 10-year-old daughter to death in the West Midlands. Jaskirat Kaur admitted to manslaughter on the basis of diminished responsibility after the child was found with fatal wounds at their home they shared in March. Prosecutors accepted today the 33-year-old's plea, and the court heard there were no dispute over the facts. Shay Kang's been described by her school as a bright, a happy and fun-loving girl. Dame Priti Patel has officially launched her Conservative leadership campaign this afternoon, promising to revive the party with a focus on the future. The former Home Secretary also denounced the Prime Minister's recent speech, calling it feeble, pitiful and dishonest, and criticised Sir Keir Starmer's approach to trade unions, criminal justice and the economy. Well, she is one of 6 candidates in the running to replace Rishi Sunak, and speaking in London earlier, she declared the party is the greatest in the world.
Under my leadership, I will bring our party experience and strength, and I will get us back to winning ways. But before I say more about my offer to members of Parliament, my plans to empower our loyal and dedicated party members, and my commitment for our party to serve the nation and the British people with professionalism and integrity.
The government says it won't impose a 4-day working week, but that it does support flexible working options. Labour says it's focused instead on compressed hours, allowing employees to work longer over fewer days, not reducing total hours. The Conservatives have criticised proposals, claiming businesses are concerned about potential costs. Ministers have admitted that government-funded childcare support for children aged over 9 months comes with significant challenges. Eligible parents in England will be entitled to 15 hours of free childcare a week from Monday, a plan inherited from the Conservatives. But the Department for Education claims around 85,000 more places will still be needed to be able to extend that support to 30 hours a week from next September. Well, Baroness Jackie Smith told us this morning that it will be an enormously difficult job to make it work.
We've been really knuckling down since we got into government, boosting up the recruitment campaign, for example, do something big which encourages people to come into the childcare workforce, making sure that we've got apprenticeships in place for people, developing the new T-level that in early years education that is actually very popular and successful and enabling more people to be trained. And it's why we'll be working between now and next year with early years providers, with local authorities, to make sure that those places, as far as we can do, are there for parents.
In the US, Kamala Harris has defended changing her mind on some of her key policies since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee. Speaking in her first major media interview since announcing she was running for the White House, the Vice President told CNN last night her values, though, haven't changed. It comes as a new poll suggests she has a 4-point lead over Donald Trump.
We have set goals for the United States of America and, by extension, the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
And finally, ABBA have demanded that Donald Trump's presidential campaign remove any videos featuring their songs. The group claims hits, including The Winner Takes It All and Dancing Queen, were used at an event without their permission. But the Republican team have insisted they do have a licence for the songs. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Time to head back to Emily. I can hear her singing a few of those ABBA tunes.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Right, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain with me, Emily Carver. Now, while Angela Rayner is raving it up in Ibiza, Dame Priti Patel is the latest Tory MP to launch her leadership bid. Now, a little bit earlier, she spoke in central London. She wants to get the Conservatives back to winning ways.
Under my leadership, I will bring our party experience and strength. And I will get us back to winning ways. But before I say more about my offer to members of Parliament, my plans to empower our loyal and dedicated party members, and my commitment for our party to serve the nation and the British people with professionalism and integrity.
Right, well, joining me now is our political editor, Christopher Hope, who was there at the event, and he also asked a question. I mean, Christopher, just first things first, the hospitality at this event was quite good. You had your mango lassies, I saw you posting. That's that Indian smoothie drink. You also had a huge amount of merchandise on sale.
That's right, T-shirts and signs. And hello, Emily, from Heart of Westminster. This is the beginning of a very busy, I would say, 10 days for the Tory party, when I think 5 of the 6 leadership campaigns to replace Rishi Sunak are going to launch. Several more Monday and Tuesday. Of course, Robert Jenrick launched his in Newark a few weeks ago. Today was Dame Priti Patel, and she gave quite a rousing speech, setting out her views and how she would approach being the Tory leader, setting out her values more than any actual real detail. She was asked about, would you restore the winter fuel payment to millions of pensioners? Which you wouldn't ask that. I asked her for GB News why she wouldn't apologise for record net legal migration on behalf of her party. No apology either. I think it's quite interesting that she's tacking more into the centre. For the most obviously right-wing candidate, she's moving very centrist. Maybe that's because that's where the parliamentary party is. But with me now is Tom Pursglove. He's a former Conservative immigration minister 3 times in that role, and he's also an advisor on the campaign for Priti Patel. Tom Pursglove, why won't your candidate apologise for record net migration?
Well, I think that Priti deserves great credit, actually, for transforming the framework of immigration that we have in this country, responding very directly to the message from the referendum that we needed to end free movement. She did the heavy lifting that meant that ministers like me could then get on the front foot and bring those numbers down. We announced at the back end of last year those policies that are delivering results. We're seeing month on month legal migration numbers falling. All of that is at risk with Labour, of course, who are now dismantling key planks of that. But it simply wouldn't have been possible without the heavy lifting, those hard yards that Priti did, putting in place the legislation and delivering on that policy.
OK, so the past year means you have got falling net migration, which will be confirmed in figures next month almost certainly. But for the previous 13 years, your government fought and won elections on a promise to cut migration and didn't do it, and that drove lots of supporters towards Reform UK. Wouldn't saying sorry help deal with that issue?
As I say, I think that actually we got it on this issue, and of course for many of those years that we were in office we were subject to EU free movement, and that simply meant that we couldn't control our borders in the way that we can now. But what it was all about, what the promise of Brexit always was, and that Priti has always understood and got to grips with in practical terms, was about delivering that ability for the UK and the UK government to set its own migration numbers, deciding who can come here. It's actually her legacy that's allowed us to deliver that change. I would actually be urging the Labour government to stick to our plan and keep bringing those numbers down.
Well, they've dropped Rwanda, and that's a big part of their plan to tackle illegal migration. No pledge there to restore the winter fuel payment to 10 million pensioners who are now worried about being warm this winter.
Our position is really clear on this. We don't think the government should scrap it in the first place. And I know that Conservative MPs and that the leadership in the House of Commons are taking forward efforts in Parliament to try and stop Labour from doing this. I would urge Labour MPs to do the right thing by their constituents, to not support their government in ending that winter fuel payment. I think there are many vulnerable elderly people on low incomes who need that support. I'm proud of our record in having sustained that. I think it was a Gordon Brown initiative that actually a Labour government introduced. But they shouldn't do this in the first place, but we will fight that every step of the way.
So yes or no, a Tory government would restore the winter fuel payment if it wins the election in 2028, 2029?
Our position is that we believe that elderly people should have that winter fuel payment.
So that's a yes?
We believe that people should have that winter fuel payment.
She talked about sidebar issues distracting the party. What does she mean by that?
I think the point Priti was making, and I heard this on doorsteps up and down the country, not just in the election but prior to that, but in my own constituency in Corby and East Northamptonshire, people saying that we spent too much time arguing amongst ourselves and not focusing in on delivery. And actually in areas where we had delivered, and I'd argue that, for example, getting those legal migration numbers down was a good example of this, we didn't get the credit for that because people had stopped listening to us. So what I found really encouraging about today was the energy, the enthusiasm in the room, the fact that there was this real positivity, but also recognition that we have got to change, that things do have to be different as we move forward. We do need to have that unity, and I think that Priti's the best person to deliver that.
And is the answer to tack to the right and try and win back those lost voters for reform, or stay centrist and maybe try and attract them back to you?
I remember giving an interview in the days before the general election. I was asked about whether we needed to move to the left or to the right. I actually don't think we need to do either of those things. I think what we need to do is, as Mrs Thatcher used to famously say, we need to focus on the common ground. We need to be where the majority of the British people are. I think our values align in large part with the British people's, but they were frustrated with us, and that was reflected in the votes that were cast. What we've now got to do is fight the battle of ideas all over again. We can't be complacent about that. Reassert our values, listen to the public, and have a policy offering that responds to their ambitions. And I genuinely think that Priti is the best person to do that. She's got a long history, a long tradition in the Conservative family. I think the response that you see from the members is brilliant. When she's out and about on doorsteps connecting with people, you hear it as well, and that's what she's got to offer.
Well, Tom Pursglove, thank you for joining us today on GB News. That's Tom Pursglove, the former Immigration Minister, explaining exactly why Priti Patel wasn't going to say sorry for record net migration over the past years of the Tory government.
Very interesting indeed. Christopher, just one quick question. I'm just looking at the Guido Fawkes who's backing who, the definitive Tory leadership spreadsheet. Priti Patel, she's got a bit of an uphill battle on her hands. It does look like Robert Jenrick has the most backers as it stands within the parliamentary party. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, there we go.
Yes, I think that is right. That is right. But what we have at the moment, Emily, is around 70 or so Tory MPs who are yet to publicly declare. So there's a lot to play for. I think next week we're seeing votes looking forward into next week around Wednesday, and then the following Monday go to from 6 to 5 to 4 candidates. And then those 4 candidates go into the party conference when they'll be grilled by the base, and a final vote by MPs after that party conference in early October will give you 2 final candidates to go to the grassroots, with a result on the 2nd of November. Still somewhere to go. It won't be sunny by the time that happens.
OK, so the grassroots get to choose between the final 2. Very interesting indeed. Christopher Hope, our political editor, thank you very much, and for that interview with Tom Pursglove now. Now to some very serious news. West Midlands police have started a murder inquiry after a 13-year-old boy was stabbed to death near Birmingham. Now, the boy died in what detectives are calling a tragic stabbing on the outskirts of Birmingham. He was treated by paramedics, but sadly died at the scene. Now, GB News West Midlands reporter Jack Carson joins us now. Jack, tell us what's happened and where we are.
Well, this investigation is still very active here in Sandwell, in Oldbury. We're in Lovett Avenue, where police say and confirm they were called at 4 p.m. Yesterday afternoon to those reports of the stabbing of a 13-year-old boy. As you were mentioning, paramedics who arrived on the scene were unable to save him. Today we've seen the opening of this murder investigation that West Midlands police confirmed this morning was taking place. We've seen numerous forensic officers going in and out of the property as those investigations start. We've also seen members of West Midlands police and investigating officers go door to door to try and get a picture really of what exactly happened here yesterday. People who we believe are close family of the boy and also local residents have started to lay flowers now also at the door of the property in tribute to that 13-year-old boy who local residents have told us was one of twins. Darius Rayner, who's a local youth worker here, was here this morning. He's laid some flowers. He spoke to us a little bit earlier on.
I'm feeling really sad, and I don't know whether to blame ourselves or our service or our government. Are we failing? It's going to be really sad for the family as well to live with that their child is no more, and for the community as well. It's going to have a very effect on the whole of the community that it's actually come to our doorstep now, because you hear about it in the areas. Somebody's been stabbed, some child's been stabbed, some man's been stabbed. Today it's happened at our doorstep, in our area, on our street.
You can Hear there from Darius the shock that this community is so obviously in. We've had that shock repeated to us multiple times. People that have lived here for a long time are really shocked at this incident and what happened here yesterday afternoon. Detective Superintendent Sean Edwards from the West Midlands Police Homicide Team said in a statement this morning that it's tragic that a young life has been lost. They confirmed that specialist officers would be supporting the family, and they said that they've got detectives working flat out to find who is responsible and to bring them into custody.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Jack Carson, our West Midlands reporter there. Horrific story. A 13-year-old boy stabbed to death there. Now, we've got a lot coming up, including Angela Rayner. She's been raving in Ibiza, but she's also been working on this big package of workers' rights, and it could include a 4-day week, or at least the right for any employee to demand a 4-day week. What do you make to that? gbnews.com/your say. It's the break now, though.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ben, do you like baking?
Baking? Only flapjack.
Why flapjack?
It's just a childhood favourite. Otherwise, no, I don't have time to do anything, no.
Yeah.
No, do you?
I love baking.
Really?
Yeah, I find it really relaxing.
You never bring in any treats for me.
I know, I was thinking
Scones
that's
or
next,
cakes?
isn't it? Scones.
Oh, it's my birthday next week.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know what to do?
I've
You're not
really
here,
dug
are
a
you?
hole for myself now, haven't I? No, I actually am here next week.
OK, well, you know what to do then.
OK. I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by JP from Bridget's Bakery.
BB is the brand, is the face, is the smile. She originated the motto, making London smile, so that's what we try to do on board of our lovely buses and in our shops.
Which is probably the most British thing you could imagine.
Yes, we try to do a 3-in-1. We try to really embrace all of the culture and history, so Roadmaster buses, 1970s. Oh, nice pictures. We have the food afternoon tea, 1700.
JP, is it scone or scone? And also, where does the word come from?
Ben.
Is it of French origin?
Ben, how very dare you asking me? Are you trying to actually put me under the spotlight? I would say, according to a Belgian person, it's scone.
Scone.
Exactly.
Oh, that's what
so I
you
like to do a mix of both. But I would say...
Sorry, JP.
Common as muck. and another key question which many Brits get tangled up in is it the jam first or the cream first?
So, I'll tell you a very scientific fact I just made up on my way here this morning. The best way to eat your scone or scone is, first step, you split it in 2 halves.
Yeah.
On one half, you do the cream and jam. The other half, the jam and cream.
Oh, no.
Then, if you feel like people looking at you, you should squash it together. And if really the tension is quite high, you should give your scone to the nearest person holding a chef jacket. There you go.
That sounds too diplomatic.
Yeah.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. You're with me, Emily Carver. Now, workers could be given the right to work just a 4-day week under new government plans to increase flexible working. Now, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, she's apparently championing this as part of a new law in consultation with trade unions and businesses. Now, if enacted, this new law would mean that employees still have to work full hours to receive full pay, but they could demand to compress their contracted hours into a shorter working week. So potentially 5 days work, but into a 4-day week, and they'd be allowed to demand this from day one, presumably. Joining me now to discuss this is GB News political reporter Catherine Forster. Catherine, this is a big package around workers' rights that Angela Rayner has been working on for months, if not years. Is this a serious proposal?
Well, we're going to get this draft bill probably next month, and there's lots in it. So, yes, it is quite radical. The ability to switch off after hours, greater protections as soon as any probationary period is over, and this right to request a 4-day working week rather than a 5. Now, I think it's worth saying that, although some businesses will be very concerned by this, of course, this is not going to apply to anybody by all means. If you're a teacher, if you work in hospitality, whatever, there's many, many jobs that have to be done on the days and hours that they have to be done, and there is not that flexibility. But whereas at the moment workers have the rights to request flexible working, employees don't have to give those but now it will be that they will need to accommodate things like compressed hours, as they call them, unless it is, quote, not reasonably feasible. Now, the government's argument is that we have lots of worker shortages, lots of people who've left the workplace after COVID and haven't come back, and that actually, if you simply do the same amount of work, just in fewer days, so example, rather than doing 9 to 5, 5 days a week, you do 8 till 6, 4 days a week. You're not losing any work. The money would be the same. What is the problem? They're saying that will encourage people back into the workplace. People get then more time with their families. It reduces commuting costs, childcare issues, etc., etc. They say that it's going to actually make us more productive, and that can help with growth, which we hear over and over again is their number one mission. But of course, there will be concerns with businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, Catherine Forster, our political reporter based there in Westminster. It does seem a little bit authoritarian, the government wanting to get involved in your employment contracts to this degree. Anyway, we're going to move on because Labour's Jess Phillips, now she's reportedly claimed she received preferential treatment at an NHS hospital in Birmingham because the doctor happened to agree with her stance on a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, this was all said at an event called An Evening with Jess Phillips, and she described an episode from her trip to A&E, suggesting that it may not just be policing, which could be guided by a two-tier approach. People are now talking about a two-tier NHS. Well, joining me now is journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. Benjamin, thank you very much indeed. What a thing to say.
I think Jess Phillips is known for her characteristic honesty, and this is particularly honest. So what she said at this Evening with Jess Phillips was that she thinks she was put towards the front of the queue, because she was the Member of Parliament in the first place. And then when she saw the doctor, it turned out that he was of Palestinian descent and commented on her views. So she resigned from Labour's shadow front bench in order to support a ceasefire. And he apparently, recognised that and said that he agreed with her. And she felt that, the two things together, being a Member of Parliament and her particular politics, got her speedy service in the NHS, which, clearly isn't appropriate. But I would suggest that she was telling this story to point out a problem of how hard it is to get seen by a doctor.
Yes, but she revealed quite a lot about how perhaps some of our clinicians are behaving when it comes to political issues like Gaza, which of course is hugely controversial. I just worry that if you happen to walk into that hospital, into the A&E department, and you had a little Israel flag on, you might be pushed to the back of the queue.
There have been serious questions about this. There was a doctor who became high profile for doing several interviews where he was talking about Hamas and Israel in ways that were highly inflammatory, and he worked as a doctor in the NHS. There have been several examples of cases like that. And I think it should be a concern. It's a question about about where do you draw the line with politics and personal opinion. You know, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has said that if somebody is racist or abusive to a member of staff, then they should be refused service. Now, that's a difficult one to judge because obviously that's inappropriate behaviour. Nobody should be subjected to it at work. But also, you know, healthcare is so fundamental. You know, where do you draw the line on people's attitudes? I think the idea that doctors are talking about politics in that context just strikes me as inappropriate in the first place. You know, what if someone is a transgender patient? Now, the doctor may be very supportive ideologically or not supportive of that, but that's not what they're there to do. They're there to discuss a medical question.
It just seems absolutely crazy that Jess Phillips would first admit to this and not call it out. It seems like she was almost boasting about it.
I mean, to be fair, you know, she was obviously in A&E because she was quite unwell. I think she said her lips had turned blue, so clearly something had gone quite wrong. So maybe at that point you probably don't really want to be an MP, you just want to be healthy, right? I think the reason she's highlighted this is to...
We can't have an NHS where, depending on your position on Gaza, you're treated more quickly or more slowly. I mean, that's absolutely crazy.
I mean, it probably is crazy, but, I mean, we are seeing this a lot. You know, businesses increasingly take a view on contentious issues. The ice cream brand, at another end of the scale, Ben & Jerry's, has been heavily opinionated on lots of political things, and it can drive people to consume those products. But should we be surprised that this might affect other areas? You know, we come to work to discuss politics, but I'm not sure that's really what you want a doctor to be doing.
Yeah, I don't want to know what my NHS doctor thinks about a Gaza ceasefire, to be honest, nor do I want to know what they think about illegal immigration or climate change. I think that needs to stop at the door when you're working with the entirety of the population, who will all have completely different views on absolutely everything. Benjamin, I also want to draw your attention to what Angela Rayner's been doing recently. She's been having a great time in Ibiza. I think we could show a clip of her at the DJ booth, or behind the DJ booth. She's got a bottle of water, I think it is. I wouldn't want to suggest it's anything else. There she is, keeping hydrated, dancing around. This is on Denise Van Outen's Instagram page. She's having a wonderful time. Now, this was about the same time as Keir Starmer was delivering that utterly miserable speech to the nation, where he told us everything's going to get worse before it gets better. Well, for Angela Rayner, it looks like it's only going up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how happy Keir Starmer is going to be that she was doing this. It's not new. We've seen similar videos like this when she was in opposition. You know, she famously, you know, there's talk of smoking being banned in pub gardens, and Angela Rayner is a smoker. There's some actually quite glamorous photographs of her that have been going viral. So we know, we know that she is someone that has a great lot of fun. But there's a real question here, that the tone of the Labour government is that times are going to be hard. People with the broadest shoulders take the biggest weight, Keir Starmer has said. And so when Rachel Reeves is doing cuts to winter fuel allowance and likely some form of tax rises in October, does it really fit to have someone going out there and having this much fun? I would imagine that Keir Starmer was less than impressed when this video crossed his desk.
Well, I must say that lots of you have been getting in touch at home about all this. Some of you seeing the sunny side, the funny side of it. Others saying it's not quite what she should be doing. She should get back and sort the country out if it's in such a dire state as she suggests it is.
The former Prime Minister of Denmark, Helle Thorning-Schmidt, she was known as Gucci Helle, which is obviously slightly sexist, but she wore very glamorous and expensive clothes, and she would go out clubbing. There was a video recently of her DJing at a massive place in Denmark. So, you know, there is precedent for senior Labour politicians to be ravers. I do think that a country that's comfortable with itself wouldn't mind that a politician has a Saturday night like everybody else does.
I mean, maybe it actually suits Keir Starmer quite nicely. He comes across as very boring and managerial to some of the public, whereas Angela Rayner can perhaps, you know, get some young people on side. I don't know. And
how many grandmas go clubbing in Ibiza on the weekend?
Quite a few, I imagine.
Oh, really? I don't think in my family I've seen it. But, you know, it is also, in another way, it's nice to see, you know, she's not particularly old, but she's certainly middle-aged. You know, a woman like that going out there, living her life, having a sense of humour, having a sense of fun. You know, I
don't know. Rosa doesn't agree. She says Angela Rayner's behaviour on holiday is an absolute disgrace. How unbecoming of a deputy prime minister, completely lacking decorum in public. There should be an official investigation into her behaviour. Someone else says no class, no decorum. Definitely not the manner to be a deputy prime minister of this country. Politicians are a sham, not a patch on years gone by. Reckon you would have seen Margaret Thatcher doing that back in the days?
I think I very much doubt it. But, you know, I think she's clearly quite glamorous. I think it appeals to some people. Yeah, I think she is. And also, she's got a bottle of water, so it's not like she's off her face. I think many of us on our third night in Benidorm have probably done things that we wouldn't want our workplaces to know about.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed, Benjamin Butterworth, journalist and broadcaster. Now, in relation to the Jess Phillips story we were talking about, GB News has reached out to University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust. We're yet to hear a response, but we will get it to you as and when we do hear. This is Good Afternoon Britain. On GB News, we've got lots more coming up on today's show. Apparently, there's going to be even more tube strikes, despite the union involved already receiving a pay offer of up to £70,000. We'll have the latest after the news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you, just after 1:30. And the top story from the newsroom this hour. A 13-year-old boy has died in what detectives are calling a tragic stabbing on the outskirts of Birmingham. A murder investigation has now been launched after the teenager was found at a property in Oldbury yesterday afternoon. He was treated by paramedics, but sadly died at the scene. The West Midlands Force say there haven't been any arrests so far. A mother has admitted to killing her 10-year-old daughter in the West Midlands in March. Jaskirat Kaur pleaded guilty to the manslaughter of Shay Kang on the basis of diminished responsibility. That was at Wolverhampton Crown Court this morning. She'll be sentenced on the 25th of October. Dame Priti Patel has officially launched her Conservative leadership campaign, promising to revive the party with clear goals and a focus on the future. The former Home Secretary has also denounced Sir Keir Starmer's recent speech, calling it feeble, pitiful and dishonest, criticising his approach to trade unions, criminal justice and the economy. She's one of 6 candidates in the running to replace Rishi Sunak, and speaking in London earlier, she declared the Conservative Party is the greatest in the world.
Under my leadership, I will bring our party experience and strength, and I will get us back to winning ways. But before I say more about my offer to members of Parliament, my plans to empower our loyal and dedicated party members, and my commitment for our party to serve the nation and the British people with professionalism and integrity.
Reports that businesses will be forced to accept workers' demands for a 4-day working week have been dismissed by the government this morning. Labour said it's focused instead on compressed hours, allowing employees to work longer over fewer days, not though reducing total hours. But the Conservatives have criticised any proposed changes to work arrangements, claiming businesses are concerned about potential costs. And ministers have admitted that government-funded childcare support for babies aged 9 months or over comes with significant challenges. Eligible parents in England will be entitled to 15 hours of free childcare a week from Monday, a plan inherited from the Conservatives. But the Department for Education claims around 85,000 more places will still be needed if that support is to be extended to 30 hours a week from September next year. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with a full update at 2 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, let's take a look at the markets for you this hour. The pound will buy you $1.3179 and €1.189. The price of gold, £1,913.38 per ounce. And the FTSE 100, just after 1:30, is standing at 8,405 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello again. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's the penultimate day of meteorological summer, and there's going to be quite a summery feel to things for many of us as we go through this afternoon, because high pressure is firmly in control, and high pressure generally means settled weather, which is what we have. For most, it is going to stay dry, not For all of us, there are some showers, particularly towards the far northeast of Scotland, and some blustery winds here, but all of this will ease as we go through the day. Otherwise, though, like I said, it's looking dry, although there will be some cloud bubbling up as we go through the afternoon, perhaps becoming a bit more widespread. Still some sunshine, and in the sunshine, feeling pretty warm with temperatures up a nudge compared to yesterday. Staying mostly fine for many of us as we go through the end of the day. Still some sunshine around in places. Like I said, the showers across the far northeast of Scotland will ease as we go through the day, but a few for Orkney and Shetland continuing still as we go into the evening. Otherwise, across the rest of Scotland, lots of fine weather to be had, lots of sunshine to look forward to in between the cloud. A similar story for Northern Ireland, northern central parts of England and Wales, but perhaps towards the far south-southeast of the UK, things will start to turn a little bit cloudier, perhaps a little bit breezier as we go through this evening. Overnight, many places staying dry, and there will be clear skies for most, away from the far southeast, where we are going to see that cloud building and perhaps a few showers arriving as we head towards dawn on Saturday morning. Otherwise, and in other places with the clear skies, again, it is going to be a relatively cool night, although temperatures may be slightly higher than last night. As we go through Saturday, then a bit of cloud towards the southeast, and this is going to become a bit more widespread across central southern parts as we go through the day. And there is the risk of a few showers developing towards the south, and these could turn heavy, possibly thundery. But further north, it's staying dry with plenty of sunshine around, and again, feeling warm in the sunshine. I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Southbound on the M5, queue in traffic to an earlier accident at junction 3 for Birmingham. All lanes have reopened after a brief hold. Eastbound on the M20, slow traffic to an accident, a lane closure from 6 through to junction 7 for Maidstone. The M11 northbound is looking slow. There's a lane closure on the exit slip road to junction 7 for Harlow. It is, however, all reopened for the eastbound side of the M27. An earlier accident from 4 through to 5 for Southampton Airport has cleared. And northbound on the M5, that's looking slow to earlier emergency repairs that took place from Wellington at 26 to Taunton at 25. The M4, however, is coping well. An earlier issue at Newport has cleared, and the M4 on the move both east and westbound. That's the latest. More on the roads later.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Right, OK, welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain with me, Emily Carver. It is now 1:40 and tube drivers apparently are preparing to go on strike after rejecting a pay offer which would have raised their salaries to almost £70,000. Now, London Underground staff have been offered a 3.8% pay rise by TfL. However, threats of fresh strikes come after mainline rail drivers were handed a double-digit pay rise by the government. So is what we're seeing. The train drivers on the main lines, they've been offered their inflation-busting pay rise. Now TfL want it too. Will these strikes ever end? We're joined now by travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder. Simon, you offer one bunch of train drivers a big fat pay rise and then the others come along asking for the same.
What a surprise, yes. And of course, there is no love lost between the two different unions here. ASLEF, the train drivers union, as you say, got a very decent 15% rise. Now, they would say it didn't actually keep tabs with inflation, but it does mean that they effectively went from kind of 60,000 to getting on for 70,000. The Transport for London drivers who are basically paid pretty much the same salary, because it's tricky with the national train drivers because they'll get lots of different rates. But they are getting a rise, which I think is going to take them to £69,650. So just a shade short. That was the pay rise offered. The RMT union, which represents almost all tube drivers, said that's not good enough. And they're waiting for a suitable offer, which is going, obviously, I would say, if they can agree on one, is going to take people to above £70,000. And it's a difficult, stressful job that requires lots of training. But of course, there's lots of other people in difficult, stressful public service jobs that require lots of training. So teachers, paramedics, nurses might say, £70,000 seems to be about the going rate. And that would be quite interesting for the public finances, I think.
Simon, are TfL workers by and large underpaid in your view? I mean, the train drivers, 70k, that sounds like a pretty decent salary. Clearly there's demand for more than that. But what about the other workers?
It's a huge spread. Generally, in any transport undertaking, it's people like the cleaners who will get the lowest pay. And then it's across a fairly broad spectrum. I'm not sure that I think there's a lot of competition for a lot of jobs, both at TfL and for national rail companies, which kind of indicates that they are relatively well paid. And of course, the train drivers, both nationally represented by ASLEF, who, by the way, have just last night called off a strike due to start this weekend, and the RMT representing the tube drivers have kind of said, well, this is what we expect. And the other thing, which I think that both unions now believe, is that they have proved that the tube, the national rail services are simply too important to be allowed to be on strike. And so therefore they're saying, OK, well, we're going to strike until we get what we need. And the train drivers, I don't think, will be coming back for more for a while. But the RMT rail workers who actually settled about 18 months ago, after about 18 months, so really at the start of this year, they will now be thinking, hang on, ASLEF got 15% pay rise. RMT members working for the tube driving trains are getting 70,000. What about me? And, well, guess who's going to be caught in the middle? It's the poor old passenger and the poor old taxpayer. What a surprise.
Absolutely. We'll get hit again in the pocket. And these unions do have a lot of leverage. They can bring us almost to a standstill, particularly TfL in London. That would be disastrous to have long-term strikes on that facility. But thank you very much indeed. Simon Calder there outside Waterloo Station, I believe, in central London. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I must bring you, before the break, I must bring you a bit of breaking news. If you were hoping to send your children or grandchildren to Eton College, you're going to have a big bill. They're apparently going to pass on the full cost of the 20% VAT that Labour are bringing in to parents. So get this, it's going to go from £53,000 a year to send one kid to Eton to £63,000, more than £63,000. Now, I hazard a guess that there aren't actually that many Brits who can afford that for their children. You'd have to earn, what, about £130,000 to be able to even make that much money just for one school year. I imagine it will mean that actually it will be a lot of rich foreigners who send their kids to Eton College as a result of this policy. Does that really make things more equal? I don't know. But yes, Eton College, £63,000 a year because of that VAT charge. This is Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, including, would you fancy being weighed at work? This is a potential new NHS outreach scheme to try and get us all healthy and make sure that we, are not going to suffer from a heart attack or the like.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Bank Holiday Monday, we'll be celebrating National Dog Day by uncovering how many pet owners would rather spend the bank holiday with their pet over their partner. In fact, new research has uncovered the 5 key personas that make up Generation Pet. That's a new wave of post-pandemic pet owners, with 58% saying they worry about their pet being diagnosed with a serious illness. Well, joining us now to tell us more about how we should be caring for our pampered pooches is Dr. Edwina Gildia.
Some of the interesting facts coming through that is that 80% of us think that pet as part of the family. The new pet owners who have come on board during the pandemic, there's a lot to learn with being a new pet owner. Interesting facts, as you mentioned, a third of pet owners are preferring to spend time with their pet this weekend over their partner. 60% of pet owners, and Dog, specifically calling them out, say that their dog improves their mental health, and 55% noting that improves their physical health by getting out and about.
It's also about showing that love and appreciation for these animals which don't ask anything of us but love.
That was another point that came through this research that we did at Zoetis UK, is that they bring a purpose to life. And I think that's another thing to call out. It's so important for ourselves, for society to have that purpose. But with that comes responsibility. And that's ensuring that we do support their health, and we know how to do that as well.
If you'd rather spend your bank holiday with your dog than your partner, maybe we've got too much of an over-reliance on our pets?
I think it depends on what way you look at it. For some people, it may be a connection. I think it's a positive thing that we have, and we should celebrate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain. It is now 1:49. Now, more than 130,000 people in England will be offered free workplace health checks in the next 6 months. This is all part of a new NHS pilot scheme. Now, workers will provide information used to determine their risk of developing cardiovascular disease, which can cause heart attacks and strokes. Now, health experts think the checks will free up appointment times and cut waiting lists. But how do you fancy being weighed at work? Well, we're joined by Tam Fry, chair of the National Obesity Forum. Tam, can you imagine this in the workplace? Apparently they're targeting over 40s and particularly male-dominated industries. Can you imagine people lining up for their in-house health check, their health MOT, and being weighed in the office and all that?
Well, they do that in Japan as a program to prevent all these problems, and that works perfectly satisfactorily. They've been doing it since 2008. So if they can do it in Japan, they can do it here. And particularly mentioned in the Times today are the Jaguar Land Rover Occupational Health that has actually put £15 million per year into looking after its employees. So therefore, I think it's a very good idea. But what should happen is that the government actually is too late at the age of 40. It should start much earlier.
Oh, really? What age do you think it should start at?
Well, in my view, it should start with children, because if children grow overweight, and there are now something like 20% of children who are obese by the age of 5, they will continue to grow through their teenage years and into adulthood, and they will then pick up other conditions triggered by obesity. And therefore, you've really got to start very early and make sure that the children are as trim as possible with right education, and the parents need educating as well. And then you will prevent this huge problem which we have in this country.
You know what, I agree with you. I think this could actually be quite a good idea. I know from personal experience that there are a lot of men in particular who won't go to the GP as often as maybe they should. They won't always get their health checks as and when they should. They may not eat also as well as they should. If you go to work one day and you get everything checked out for free, it could, save a life and also save the NHS money down the line, I suppose.
Yeah, precisely so. This is all that... you have to remember that obesity is an entirely preventable condition. And therefore, if you address the problem of obesity early enough, and you can cure it at an early age when children are most receptive to good ideas and good teaching, then they will learn how to eat properly, exercise properly, and eat in moderation as well, because we're overeating by about 20%. And they will then finish up going into adulthood in a trim condition.
The only thing I disagree with you there is that I'm not sure. I think children probably predominantly get their eating habits from their parents, and you can't really have the NHS going into people's homes or the government going into people's homes and dictating sort of what parents put on the plate. I think it happens there rather than necessarily, in society at large.
Well, if I could say that, in fact, the government has a policy, or the previous government had a policy of family hubs. And that was a throwback from the Sure Start children's centres, which were developed in the Labour administration during the noughties. And those were the places where you could actually educate parents in cooking, food selection, and how to feed their children, so that, in fact, their children could learn at the best age of what to do and then grow into it as they grow older.
All right, well, thank you very much indeed, Tam Fry, Chair of the National Obesity Forum. Great to get your thoughts on this one. I think it's actually probably quite a good thing. I mean, the headlines are saying, do you fancy being weighed at work? I imagine it's not going to be mandatory for that. But I think if you're getting your blood pressure checked, you're getting your measurements done, you're getting other tests done for free at your workplace, can't be a bad thing, really, can it? As long as it's efficient and doesn't cost too much. I don't see what's wrong with that idea, but let me know if you think it's an awful idea. gbnews.com/your say. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. We're going to be checking in with everything that's happening in Westminster, and we're going to take a little look at the weather first.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey, hope you're having a good day. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. There will be plenty more fine weather to come as we go through the end of today and into tomorrow, but do watch out for some thundery showers. First off, though, high pressure still firmly in control, which is why it's been so settled today, and it's why it will continue to be settled as we go through the next 12 to 24 hours for most of us. Some cloud through this afternoon, but a lot of that will actually clear away as we go through this evening and overnight, away from the southeast, that is. Here we are going to see a bit more cloud pushing its way in, and perhaps one or two showers developing as we head towards dawn as well. Otherwise, where we have the clear skies, it is again going to be a bit of a cool night. Temperatures perhaps holding up slightly higher than last night, but nonetheless, there could be some pockets of mist and fog first thing tomorrow morning. As we go through tomorrow morning then, starting off in the southeast, and like I said, a bit more cloud here with a few showers to watch out for. A brighter picture further west, but it is going to turn cloudier later. Meanwhile, across central parts, a sunny start to the day, and similar for Northern Ireland and into Northern England and across Scotland, but there will be a few pockets of mist and fog here and there. These should clear quite quickly as we go through the day because the sun does still have some decent strength behind it, even though it is going to be the last day of meteorological summer. Otherwise, as we go through the day, staying pretty sunny across the northern two-thirds of the country. Further south, a bit more cloud building, and with that there is the risk of some thunderstorms kicking off. They're going to be pretty isolated, so you would be unlucky to catch one, but nonetheless the risk is there. Temperatures are going to be reaching highs of around low, possibly mid-20s towards the south, a few degrees cooler than this further north. Chance of a few more showers kicking off as we go through tomorrow evening and overnight. They could be a little bit impactful for some places with some intense rain, perhaps even some hail mixed in. And then the showers could become a bit more widespread, particularly across central and eastern parts on Sunday, and then some more wet weather to come as we go through early next week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. And you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
That's
the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you a drink.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Friday, the 30th of August. You're with me, Emily Carver. Now, Dame Priti Patel is the latest candidate to take command of the Conservatives, vowing to unite and revive the party. But would she get your vote? And workless migrants. According to a new report, record numbers of migrants living in Britain are not working, costing taxpayers an estimated £8 billion, with almost 1.7 million non-UK nationals neither working or classed as economically inactive because they're not looking for a job. Two-tier NHS. Labour's Jess Phillips reportedly claimed she received preferential treatment at an NHS hospital in Birmingham because the doctor happened to agree with her stance on a ceasefire in Gaza. Bye-bye Maggie. Sir Keir Starmer has reportedly taken down a portrait of Margaret Thatcher from Downing Street, from the Thatcher Room, no less, only weeks after moving in, describing the artwork as unsettling. Less than a year ago, he heaped praise upon Thatcher for bringing meaningful change to the UK. And royal reunion. It's been reported that the Prince of Wales and Duke of Sussex have both attended the funeral of their uncle, Lord Fellows, placing them in the same room for the very first time this year. I think this story about Jess Phillips is absolutely huge. So Jess Phillips, Labour's Jess Phillips, in Birmingham, she goes to an A&E for urgent treatment, and she's given preferential treatment, according to her claim at this event that she was doing. Her claim that she got preferential treatment because her doctor happened to be Palestinian and happened to appreciate her stance on the Gaza ceasefire. So now there are concerns that perhaps we have a bit of a two-tier NHS system here, that if your doctor agrees with your politics, you may well get better treatment in our National Health Service. What do you make to that? We're going to be speaking to the person who wrote up this report in the Daily Mail today. It is quite shocking, actually. So what would happen if I just turned up with a little Israeli flag? Would I be, left to wait a little longer? Is that really the state of modern Britain? Get your thoughts in gbnews.com/your say. We've also got a lot else to be discussing as well. But let's get to your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Emily, thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 2, and the top story this hour. A murder investigation has been launched after a 13-year-old boy was stabbed to death at a house in West Midlands. The teenager was treated by paramedics at the scene but died at the scene in Oldbury yesterday afternoon. No one, they say, has been arrested so far, with police calling his death absolutely tragic. Well, local youth worker Darius Ryman told us he's in shock.
I'm feeling really sad, and I don't know whether to blame ourselves or our service or our government. Are we failing? It's going to be really sad for the family as well to live with that their child is not no more, and for the community as well. It's going to have a very effect on the whole of the community that it's actually come to our doorstep now, because you hear about it in other areas. Somebody's been stabbed, some child's been stabbed, some man's been stabbed. Today it's happened at our doorstep, in our area, on our street.
In Wales, a woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder after the death of a child there. Police were called to a home in Swansea last night. A 41-year-old who lived with that child is now being questioned in Bridgend. Detectives say they're not looking for anyone else. A mother has pleaded guilty to stabbing her 10-year-old daughter to death in the West Midlands. Jaskarit Kaur admitted to manslaughter on the basis of diminished responsibility after the child was found with fatal wounds at their home in March of this year. Prosecutors accepted the 33-year-old's plea at the court and heard that there was no dispute over the facts. Shay Kang's been remembered by her school as a bright, a happy and fun-loving girl. Dame Priti Patel has officially launched her Conservative leadership campaign today, promising to revive the party with a focus on the future. The former Home Secretary also denounced Sir Keir Starmer's recent speech as feeble, pitiful and dishonest, criticising his approach to trade unions, criminal justice and the economy. She's one of 6 candidates running to replace Rishi Sunak, and speaking earlier in London, she declared the Conservative Party as the greatest in the world.
Under my leadership, I will bring our party experience and strength, and I will get us back to winning ways. But before I say more about my offer to members of Parliament, my plans to empower our loyal and dedicated party members, and my commitment for our party to serve the nation and the British people with professionalism and integrity.
The government says it won't impose a 4-day working week, but that it does support flexible working options. Labour says it's focused instead on compressed hours, allowing employees to work longer over fewer days, not reducing total hours. The Conservatives have criticised any proposals, claiming businesses are concerned about potential costs. Ministers have admitted that government-funded childcare support for babies aged 9 months or over does come with significant challenges. Eligible parents in England will be entitled to 15 hours of free childcare a week from Monday, a plan inherited from the Conservatives. But the Department for Education claims around 85,000 more places will be needed to be able to extend that free support to 30 hours a week from September next year. Well, Baroness Jackie Smith told us earlier that it will be an enormously difficult job to make that work.
We've been really knuckling down since we got into government, boosting up the recruitment campaign, for example, do something big which encourages people to come into the childcare workforce, making sure that we've got apprenticeships in place for people, developing the new T-level that in early years education that is actually very popular and successful and enabling more people to be trained. And it's why we'll be working between now and next year with early years providers, with local authorities, to make sure that those places, as far as we can do, are there for parents.
In the US, Kamala Harris has defended changing her mind on some key policies since becoming the Democratic Party's presidential nominee. Speaking in her first major media interview since announcing she was running for the White House, she told CNN last night her values haven't changed. And it comes as a new poll suggests she has a 4-point lead over Republican Donald Trump.
We have set goals for the United States of America and, by extension, the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
And ABBA are demanding that Donald Trump's presidential campaign remove any videos that feature their songs. The group's claimed hits, including The Winner Takes It All and Dancing Queen, Emily's favourite, were used at an event without their permission. But the Republican team insist they have a licence. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you for one more update in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 2:08 now. That's quite funny, actually, that story that ABBA are kicking off over Trump using their songs in the rally. This happens so much, doesn't it, with the Republicans? I can't remember, but there was definitely another band or another artist that wrote to Trump demanding the same. Stop using my music. Anyway, let's get back to Westminster, because Dame Priti Patel is the latest Tory MP to launch her leadership bid. She spoke earlier in central London, and she wants to get the Conservatives back to winning ways.
Under my leadership, I will bring our party experience and strength, and I will get us back to winning ways. But before I say more about my offer to members of Parliament, my plans to empower our loyal and dedicated party members, and my commitment for our party to serve the nation and the British people with professionalism and integrity.
Well, joining me now is our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, thank you very much indeed. Priti Patel, she sounded quite confident, didn't she, Chris?
Yes, yeah, hi Emily. Yeah, I think she did. Well, I'm still here outside the venue where Priti Patel was a few hours ago announcing her plans to be Tory leader. Yeah, she did, I think. She said she wants the party to speak with one voice, she said. We need the British people as our compass, she said. We owe Boris Johnson a great deal. He motivated the grassroots. He was a true leader. I think interesting also about net migration. She was asked about that. She said context does matter in terms of record immigration figures. And she said it's too late to speak about numbers. Earlier, that was my question to her, and here's what she had to say.
You're seen as the most right-wing candidate of the 6 candidates to replace Rishi Sunak. You're proud of your grassroots Conservative base, but you won't apologise for record net migration under your government's watch. You didn't vote against the smoking ban when you had a chance to. How can you reconcile and win back Reform voters from that position? And if you were Prime Minister, would you remove a portrait of Tony Blair?
Margaret Thatcher's going straight back on the rule. Let me just get that on the record first of all. Well, look, number one, I'm not going to play that game of soundbite politics. You've just heard me also give a speech about freedom and Conservative values and beliefs. And Chopper, you know, when it comes to freedom, it's freedom as to how we live our lives. You've also seen what I've said in recent days around the smoking ban, what that is going to mean actually for businesses, for pubs, the hospitality sector. I think just before the general election, I was spending a lot of time with the hospitality sector, not just in my own constituency, but elsewhere. The other point just to say on this issue is that we've got a government that wants the police, the very people that should be policing our streets, to be policing beer gardens and things of that nature. In my view, we need the police on the streets, not in beer gardens. They need to be doing their job. And, you know, this is exactly where we need to unpick this awful Labour government.
I mean, Christopher, she completely avoided answering that question. How's that going to go down with the party faithful?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we look at those 4 million voters to reform UK. We know that the failure to control legal and illegal migration was one of the main causes of that. Polls regularly put migration at the top level. And I'm intrigued by someone like Priti Patel not wanting to say, look, we got it wrong, we failed to deliver on the promise through 4 elections, and I will get that better. She says that it's a context issue. She talks about we need doctors and nurses. She almost defends that record, and I wonder whether that might change going when this contest goes to the base. We're going to see MPs in Parliament whittle the number of candidates down from 6 to 5. 6 go to 5 on Wednesday next week. The following Monday it goes 5 to 4, and it may be that changes plan. It may be that people like Priti Patel are talking to quite a moderate base in the parliamentary party, and they don't want to hear people apologising for mass net migration. Someone like Suella Braverman, if she was standing, she would be saying, not on my watch, I'm sorry. And in fact, other candidates have said the same thing. So it's intriguing that she won't do that. She clearly doesn't want to do easy answers here. She wants to make sure that she can't get committed to things she can't stand for if she wins the leadership, Emily.
Yes, it's interesting, though, because it's clearly about how you do it, because Robert Jenrick has a huge amount of support in the parliamentary party, and he's been talking a lot about immigration. But thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope, our political editor in Westminster. That's how it goes. It's politics, I guess. But talking of immigration, we've got a new record in this country. Currently, there are 1.6 million migrants living in Britain, unemployed or not actively looking for work. So, apparently, this is costing the taxpayer an estimated £8 billion. Now, this all comes as the Institute for Government is actually asking Labour to consider loosening immigration policy to meet their ambitious house-building targets. So I guess, is it time to bring in skilled migrants to fuel Angela Rayner's house-building boom? And what do you make of those figures of people in this country, non-UK nationals, simply not looking for work? Well, joining me now is former Immigration Minister Kevin Foster. Kevin, let's start with that figure, 1.6, 1.7 non-UK nationals in this country, unemployed or not looking for work. What is that about?
Well, it's a pretty dramatic number, to say the least. And whilst there'll always be exceptions, like the spouse of a Premier League footballer who's come here on a sportsperson visa, are unlikely to be looking for a job. Yeah, unlikely to be looking for a job down the local job centre today. It is a number. It also speaks to what we also need to do around things like integration as well, because if people have come, particularly if they've come as a dependent of someone to the UK, and if they don't pick up English, which is probably the biggest barrier to entering the employment market, you know, we're not doing anyone any favours by them not actually being able to integrate into society here. Yes,
it may be that quite a large part of these figures are women who have never worked or who have never sought work, and that probably is an issue with integration, as you say. Robert Bates, the research director at the Centre for Migration Control, who I believe has published this report, now he's said, he's put it very strongly, he said there's no reason for us to continue handing out so many long-term visas when we are currently having to bail out over 1 million migrants who are already in Britain but not working. This is the very definition of a Ponzi scheme. Would you share that sentiment?
I think he's got a lot to be said for what's been said there and the views they're expressing, is that whilst we've got a base of people who work, and also not just the numbers we're talking about here of foreign nationals, but also amongst our own population as well. And we do need to have more of a focus, particularly if just touched construction. And, you know, I've still got scars on my back from my own time as Immigration Minister, where every sector that had a recruitment issue would, you know, perhaps rather than look at things like terms and conditions, wage rates, training schemes, you know, apparently a visa was going to be the magic solution to all their problems. You know, we need to really focus on, actually, we have people in this country who are not in gainful employment or could be in more gainful employment than they are if they had skills, I think, and actually focus on them rather than seeing migration as the go-to solution.
But, Kevin, why, when the public told successive governments over and over again that they wanted to bring immigration down, did governments and the Home Office, the Treasury, always pull that lever of mass immigration?
Well, a lot, again, you'd have certain sectors lobbying, but also we also have to reflect...
Just lobbying from sectors?
Well, a bit of that, but also you'd see, for example, Ukrainians, was pretty touched on earlier today, Ukrainians and Hong Kong nationals, people who'd retained a British identity post the handback, are then finding themselves being persecuted by President Xi. Which ones of those would we have told not to come? So that's certainly made a big chunk. But again, it is about how we really link up. And, you know, if I was waving my magic wand, I would say we should have a Department of Labour that links up demands in the labour market with immigration policy, with skills training, because it's been very easy in the past for sectors to lobby through a sector-based department for changes in visas, but if things go wrong, it's the Home Office for either trying to remove people or DCLG, the local government, or DWP, the benefits department, that end up picking up the bill.
I mean, people are always told by very worthy academics and commentators and politicians too, mostly on the left, that immigration is always a net benefit for our economy. Well, surely these figures of the number of non-UK nationals living in this country and not working sort of flies in the face of that.
Yeah, it's not always a net benefit. You have to have some control. So, for example, bringing in some very highly skilled people into our industry or into things like the NHS is going to have a benefit. But just allowing very large migration as an alternative, for example, to a sector investing in training, looking at its terms and conditions. Remember, we had all the arguments around truck driver visas, and it was very obvious that the sector needed to do a lot more around things like getting women into employment, because it was 99% men. It was a staggering figure to still have 50-odd years after we passed sex discrimination legislation that a sector which did not require huge physical strength still had something like a 99% male employment rate. And that reflected poor terms and conditions, lack of investment and failure to focus on developing homegrown staff, and instead hoping that it'd always be a sort of pot of cheap available labour at the end of an immigration rainbow. So it is not always positive to have large amounts of migration. It can push wages down and give people an alternative. So that's where I think these figures really need to refocus the debate, is how do we have that strategy for the UK labour market?
I'm sure there are people watching this who are absolutely furious to think that not only their hard-earned cash, taxpayer money, is being spent on millions of Brits who aren't working for various different reasons, but then to also find out that it's paying for, potentially billions of pounds a year for out-of-work migrants too. I mean, who is this serving? Not the British public.
No, well, people rightly... we always accept that if someone's paid their bit into society, who, for example, if you've been here, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years working in something like our NHS, paying tax and paying national insurance, and then something happened, we may have a very different view to if someone had arrived in the last year or two and then suddenly looks to access public services. And as I said, there will be some in that figure of non-economically active. There will be people who, for an obvious reason, aren't looking for a job. As we touched on, wags of a footballer won't be looking for a cleaning job part-time. But it is right, there is that social contract that our welfare system is there to help people who have contributed in, not just to pay out. That social contract
has long been broken, Kevin. Kevin Foster, thank you very much indeed. Former Immigration Minister, thank you very much. Thank you. Let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. Now, following the attack on a Swedish chef near Notting Hill Carnival earlier this week, a director of a prison rehabilitation company has been remanded into custody after being charged. Now, joining me now is our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, can you update us on this case?
Yes, so Omar Wilson, aged 31, has been remanded into custody after appearing here at Westminster Magistrates Court earlier this afternoon. He's been charged with grievous bodily harm, having been arrested in the early hours of Wednesday morning from an address in East London. Now, the court heard that Musi Imnatu, a 41-year-old Swedish national chef based in Dubai but was on a business trip to London, was attacked on the Queensway in West London after 11:20 p.m. on the outskirts of Notting Hill Carnival. The prosecution said that Mr. Imnatu had suffered catastrophic brain injuries, several bleeds on the brain and multiple cardiac arrests. He remains in a critical condition in a London hospital. But Mr. Omar Wilson, a 31-year-old, as you said, Emily, a director at a prison rehabilitation company, has been remanded into custody next to appear at Southwark Crown Court on September the 27th. He spoke only here at Westminster to confirm his name and address, wearing standard issue grey custody tracksuit. He did not give an indication of a plea, which the district judge here took as an indication of a plea of not guilty, but he'll next appear on September the 27th. The prosecution also showed some CCTV footage of the attack on Monday evening, with some members of Mr. Imnatu's family leaving the courtroom as that was played. But Mr. Omar Wilson, a 31-year-old, remanded into custody next to appear for a plea and trial preparation on September the 27th at Southwark Crown Court.
Much for keeping us up to date. Charlie Peters, our national reporter outside Westminster Magistrates Court. Thank you. Now, we've got lots more coming up on today's show. Get your thoughts in on that past interview that we had over those immigration numbers, the number of people who simply aren't looking for work in this country. Very odd indeed. But we've got lots more coming up, including Margaret Thatcher. Keir Starmer doesn't like the look of her. She's unsettling in the Thatcher room in number 10. He's apparently ordered it to go down. It's off the wall. He doesn't want to see it. What's all that about? After the break.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Stay-at-home dads, good or bad?
I personally think when you just have a baby, your hormones are all over the place, you're breastfeeding, to go back to work, I feel personally it's a big old thing. And I think babies really need their mums. On the other side, if a stay-at-home dad was a stay-at-home dad for years, I would also say, well, come on now, the children are in school. What's the issue? Why can't you go back to work?
It's really interesting because my husband's been a stay-at-home dad for 6 months and is working part-time. We both work part-time now. And that was always the choice that we were going to make. And it's been the best thing ever for my family. My husband and my daughter have the most incredible bond. He's much more practical, playful, and a better problem solver than me.
I mean, the problem I see, Annette, with all of this is that you do get a lot of women who say, we don't want the stereotype. We don't like the stereotypes. And when men say, well, actually, I want to be the parent staying at home and looking after the child, it's frowned upon. So you can't have it both ways.
I wouldn't say that's a long-term stay-at-home dad. And also, we're talking about actually dads should look after their children, and we shouldn't be praising them and say, oh, they're underappreciated for changing a nappy. That's their duty.
I think it takes real guts as a man to decide that you're going to give up those things that society deems so highly, even if it's for a short time.
Why is it then, Annette, that you say your dads should go back to work?
I read an article about a dad who was a stay-at-home dad for 15 years, pursuing his hobbies and fitness and all that. Now, I just don't think that's fair.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, welcome back. It's 2:25. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain. Now, Angela Rayner, or should I say Angela Raver, has been caught in Ibiza. She's been behind the DJ booth. She's been dancing and singing along to the lyrics. She's got her red dress on. She's got her water in her hand, keeping her hydrated. She's got huge crowds cheering. I'm not sure if they're cheering at her, but they're certainly cheering at the music and how lovely it is. Lots of you have been getting in touch about this one, actually. Some of you don't have a sense of humour humour on this one, perhaps for good reason. Avid says, oh, you've got a sense of humour, actually, David. You say, Rayner's stealing Theresa May's dance moves, lol. Simon says, what on earth is she doing? Celebrating getting a job she has no right to hold. All right, then. Get back and sort this country out. It's falling apart. I really cannot believe this. The great Badizzo says, it's a bit of an old lady dance. Harsh. Maybe she's just waiting for a dancing bear to appear. Right, OK. And lots of you are saying she should get back to work, considering Keir Starmer has painted such a bleak picture of the country. He gave that pretty miserable speech to the nation where he told us all things can only get worse before they get better. But Angela Rayner's clearly living it up, raving in Ibiza with her celebrity pals. So there you go, just a little clip for you. Perhaps you'll enjoy it. Anyway, in other news, the Prime Minister is coming under fire because he's removed a portrait of one of his predecessors, Margaret Thatcher, of course, from Downing Street. He's said to have found the painting, commissioned by Gordon Brown, unsettling. Yes, unsettling. Is this fair enough, or is this pure ideological pettiness? Well, we're joined by former Conservative MP Neil Parish. Neil, what does this tell us about the man?
Well, I just wonder whether the Prime Minister's feeling a bit insecure, because I don't know why he finds a picture of Margaret Thatcher looking down at him unsettling. I mean, I don't think Margaret Thatcher would have worried about any other Prime Ministers from history looking down on her. So I do find it quite strange, and of course, especially because it was sort of commissioned after Maggie came to tea with Gordon Brown when he hadn't long been Prime Minister back in 2007. So for me, it's very odd thing to do, especially I think it probably came out of the Thatcher room as well, did it? I don't know.
It did, yes.
I think it's all, it's strange that, when you have a room named after a Prime Minister, you do actually expect pictures of that Prime Minister to be on the wall. And I just wonder why he finds it so unsettling. And also, Maggie was, she was loved by many, all right, perhaps hated by others, but she was, in her time, I believe, a very great Prime Minister that actually changed Britain. So why Gordon Brown obviously had her to tea because he wanted some of her magic to rub off on him. But obviously, Keir Starmer, now that Maggie's passed on, doesn't even want her picture on the wall.
I mean, it's interesting, you note that she changed Britain, because that's in fact what Sir Keir Starmer said in the run-up to the election, when he presumably was courting traditional Tory voters to vote for him. He was writing in the papers how Thatcher is in some ways an inspiration. She made meaningful change for this country and the like. So there you go. To hear that he's now taken down her portrait in the Thatcher room of Number 10 is slightly bizarre. But Neil, she is a very controversial leader, a controversial figure in our political history. There is a lot of hatred as well as love for her and respect out there in the country. I mean, is it a surprise that a self-proclaimed socialist leader of this country might want to rid his home now of this image?
Well, it's not necessarily his home, is it, really? Number 10 is very much that of the country and of the Prime Minister of the day. And so, I just think it's quite bizarre because, like I said, before the election, he was pretending to be the sort of biggest Tory around, wasn't he? Have no fear, vote for me, I'm not a socialist. And when he gets into power, most of, recognising and giving the unions more money immediately, and now looking at sort of working time and all of these times, his flexibility of working, all these things are socialism. And to sort of take a picture of Margaret Thatcher down, I mean, I have to say it's pretty petty stuff, to be honest with you. And I think Maggie would probably be actually impressed the fact that she unsettled him. I imagine if she's watching this from up above, some will say down below, but I will say up above, then I think she must be quite amused by it, because I think it's just a silly thing to do. And I think, I go back to my original comments. Is the Prime Minister insecure? cure, because that's the only thing I could suggest, because I don't know about you, but I don't get very unsettled by pictures on a wall, whoever they are. I just find, I find it amusing, but I also find it a little bit hurtful for many. All right, others would sort of, say with glee, yes, take her picture down, but are we going to go around and sort of find all the prime ministers of history that we haven't liked, and are we going to take all their pictures down? I mean, it's sort of almost symbolic of our woke society. So perhaps Maggie's become, it doesn't suit the wokeism, dare I say it, in Keir Starmer. So, I think this will be debated long and hard, and I just feel disappointed, but also sort of slightly amused. And also, I think, like I said, I think the Prime Minister must be suffering from insecurity already.
All right, well, I'm sure he'd disagree with that assertion, but Neil Parish, former Conservative MP, thank you very much indeed. Lots of people getting in touch who probably do agree with that. I mean, Graham said he's saying, could the picture of Maggie just make Starmer feel inadequate? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is here, but it certainly seems petty at best. I don't know what at worst. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, including Jess Phillips. Essentially, she's claiming that she received preferential treatment on the NHS because she supported a ceasefire in Gaza.
Very good afternoon to you, just after 2:30, and a recap of the top stories this hour. Detectives in the West Midlands have begun a murder investigation after a 13-year-old boy was stabbed to death at a house in Oldbury. The teenager was found with injuries yesterday afternoon and was treated by paramedics, but sadly died at the scene. Police say they haven't made any arrests so far. A mother has pleaded guilty to stabbing her 10-year-old daughter to death in the West Midlands. Jaskirat Kaur admitted to manslaughter on the basis of diminished responsibility after the child was found with fatal wounds at their home in March. She'll be sentenced on the 25th of October. And a woman has also been arrested on suspicion of murder after the death of a child in Swansea. Police were called to a home in the town last night. A 41-year-old who lived with that child is being questioned in Bridgend. Detectives say they're not looking for anyone else. Dame Priti Patel has officially launched her Conservative leadership campaign today, promising to revive the party with clear goals and a focus on the future. The former Home Secretary also denounced Sir Keir Starmer's recent speech as feeble, pitiful and dishonest, criticising his approach to trade unions, criminal justice and to the economy. She's one of 6 candidates running to replace Rishi Sunak. The government has said that it won't impose a 4-day working week, but that it does support flexible working options. Labour says it's focused on compressed hours instead, allowing employees to work longer over fewer days, not though reducing total hours. The Conservatives have criticised any proposed changes to working arrangements, claiming businesses are concerned about potential costs. And the Foreign Office says it is worried about the risk of instability in the occupied West Bank. It's calling on restraint from Israel, which says it has killed a Hamas commander there. The IDF says it was targeting a terrorist cell, while the militant group has not yet commented. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Sophia Wensler will have your next update in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello again. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's the penultimate day of meteorological summer and there's going to be quite a summery feel to things for many of us as we go through this afternoon because high pressure is firmly in control and high pressure generally means settled weather, which is what we have. For most it is going to stay dry, not for all of us. There are some showers, particularly towards the far northeast of Scotland, and some blustery winds here, but all of this will ease as we go through the day. Otherwise, though, like I said, it's looking dry, although there will be some cloud bubbling up as we go through the afternoon, perhaps becoming a bit more widespread. Still some sunshine, and in the sunshine, feeling pretty warm with temperatures up a nudge compared to yesterday. Staying mostly fine for many of us as we go through the end of the day. Still some sunshine around in places. Like I said, the showers across the far northeast of Scotland will ease as we go through the day, but a few for Orkney and Shetland continuing still as we go into the evening. Otherwise, across the rest of Scotland, lots of fine weather to be had, lots of sunshine to look forward to in between the cloud. A similar story for Northern Ireland, northern central parts of England and Wales, but perhaps towards the far south-southeast of the UK, things will start to turn a little bit cloudier, perhaps a little bit breezier as we go through this evening. Overnight, many places staying dry, and there will be clear skies for most, away from the far southeast, where we are going to see that cloud building and perhaps a few showers arriving as we head towards dawn on Saturday morning. Otherwise, and in other places with the clear skies, again, it is going to be a relatively cool night, although temperatures may be slightly higher than last night. As we go through Saturday, then a bit of cloud towards the southeast, and this is going to become a bit more widespread across central southern parts as we go through the day. And there is the risk of a few showers developing towards the south, and these could turn heavy, possibly thundery. But further north, it's staying dry with plenty of sunshine around, and again, feeling warm in the sunshine. I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, hello to you, I'm Jules Buckley. The eastbound M62 firstly for this update. Gould towards Howden, that's the turn off junction 36 to 37 has a lane closed off. There's a breakdown there causing some congestion. Very slow for the M56 both ways between Helsby at 14 and Runcorn at 12. There was a collision eastbound, that's cleared. All the lanes are back open, but we're seeing queues back towards the M53. You're heading towards Kirby Fields in Leicestershire. The Hinckley Road there, the A47 is blocked by Kirby Lane. A collision there is causing a fair amount of congestion to build. And the northbound side of the M3, now at the moment at the turn for Camberley at junction 4, 2 lanes out of 3 are coned off. There's been a multi-vehicle collision. Looking at the cameras, the queue snaking back to Farnborough junction 4A. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 2:37 and we've got lots more coming up on the show, but we are going to introduce Martin Daubney because he's up at 3 o'clock. Martin, what have you got in store for us?
The figure that shames Britain, £8 billion a year. The bill for unemployed immigrants in the country gone through the roof. An astonishing failure of statecraft. A succession of governments failed to control our borders. This is the net result. Add £6.6 billion the cost of asylum onto that. That's over £14 billion every single year. That's 2/3 the size of the Labour Party's so-called financial black hole. And it's more than 3 times the winter fuel allowance of £4 billion that they axe. What does this country stand for? Who do they stick up for? If they had any guts about them, they'd introduce an Australian point-style system now. They'd make people prove they had the financial wherewithal to support themselves for 5 years when they allowed them in. They might cap benefits or freeze them altogether for anybody coming in for 5 years. They might say, fail to meet any of that, sign a prenup. If you don't like it, you can get out of the country. If we had a sensible government, they might run the country like that. They might also supply us with the ethnicity and the nationality of taxpayers and those on unemployment benefits. That data isn't available in Britain. It is in Denmark. I wonder why. What are they afraid of? What have they got to hide? It's time for a full and frank conversation about the perilous state of dependency Britain and our immigration dependency. That's all coming up 3 till 6 p.m.
Well, I'm sure you'll have a frank conversation on your show. Thank you very much indeed, Martin Daubney. He's up at 3 o'clock, as always. But in other news, Labour's Jess Phillips reportedly claimed she received preferential treatment at an NHS hospital in Birmingham because the doctor happened to agree with her on the stance on a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, speaking at an event called An Evening with Jess Phillips, the Labour MP described an episode from her trip to A&E, which suggests that it may not just be policing, which could be guided by a two-tier approach, but the NHS. I mean, I do worry what this tells us about what's going on in some of our institutions. Anyway, we're joined now by showbiz reporter Stephanie Tetchy. Now, Stephanie, you wrote this story for the Daily Mail today. It's a very important story. It's very shocking. Jess Phillips speaking openly at this event. Tell us exactly what she said.
Well, Emily, I was totally flabbergasted when I attended this event, which Jess had done to promote her new book. And then she did talk about this medical emergency she had, where clearly she had breathing issues. But I was really shocked when she mentioned the fact that when she turned up to this hospital in Birmingham, number one, she was given preferential treatment because she said who she is as an MP. But the second thing, which I found really distasteful, is that she had this encounter with this Palestinian doctor who she says, you know, kind of pushed her up to tend to her because she had voted for a ceasefire. This wasn't something that Jess said in a very tongue-in-cheek manner. She was being quite serious about it. And the reason why I have put this story out there, because I think we're now in this state with the NHS where people cannot get appointments to see their doctors. And then the fact that she said because she has voted for a ceasefire, it means she got seen to earlier than anybody else, which I think is a discredit to this doctor, because I'm sure as a doctor, you want to treat someone regardless of their political beliefs. And I feel like she's actually throwing Palestinian doctors in the NHS under the bus, because, you know, there are many of them who do work for patients who do have any kind of political beliefs.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. The NHS, one of its founding principles is that, you know, no one should have preferential treatment. Everyone should be treated the same, have the same access to the services. Just hearing that anyone, based on their political stance, particularly to do with a foreign conflict, would be, you know, pushed forward for quicker treatment is just outrageous. We have gone to the NHS Trust for comment. We haven't yet heard back. I imagine there's probably an internal investigation that may well come from this, because it is truly shocking. I just wonder, Stephanie, that if someone came into that hospital and met that doctor and was wearing an Israeli badge, potentially they might be pushed to the back of the queue.
And I think this is what the scary thing is about this story. And I think, you know, Jess Phillips was quite tactless making such comments, because, you know, it's a very sensitive issue wherever you stand in between the Israel and Hamas debate. But you want to know whether you're Jewish or not, that if you were going to the NHS and you're meeting a doctor, regardless of whether they're Palestinian or not, that they will help you. So I think it's been a big letdown from someone like Jess Phillips, who's supposed to be representing the Labour government, to say such comments which are tactless and will rightly so promote a backlash.
Yeah, and she's probably going to get herself into some trouble for speaking so openly like that. It may well be the truth, but politically, an absolute nightmare for the Labour Party.
It is, and we did try to contact her yesterday before I went to print with the story. We did try to get a comment from her and the Home Office, but so far we haven't received anything back. You know, Jess Phillips, she's quite a controversial character. She doesn't mince her words, so she's someone I know she will stick by this, and, you know, hopefully eventually soon she'll come out and say what her intentions were about saying that to a public audience.
And it shows how much this foreign conflict is affecting well, community relations in this country, that depending on what side you are on in a foreign conflict, you could potentially, in some areas of this country, in some hospitals, treated by some doctors and clinicians, be treated very differently depending on what side of it you're on. I mean, it is so worrying to the maximum, but it's almost a good thing that we've heard this, it's a very good thing that you've put this out and brought this to light, because people should know.
Yeah, and I think that's what the sad thing about this, because I feel like it just stokes up division more. You know, everyone, whether what side you are of this conflict, nobody wants to see that, you know, it has an effect on how you're going to be treated because of having your views. I'm all for freedom of thought, and I think regardless what you feel or think, you should be able to go to a doctor anywhere in this country and be seen, not just because you voted for a ceasefire or not.
Yes, and that's why I think it's quite important that NHS workers don't wear political badges or affiliations, just so that it at least appears to be totally neutral, because every person walking into a hospital, walking into a GP's office, walking into whatever it is related to the NHS should feel as though they can just be themselves and they'll not be judged by the clinician that's looking after them. Stephanie Tetchy, thank you so much for bringing us that story. Stephanie there, who's written in the Mail on what Jess Phillips had to say at this ticketed event. It was an evening with Jess Phillips, and she clearly has been perhaps a little too honest for her own good when it comes to this. But essentially, preferential treatment in an NHS hospital in England, in Birmingham, because of your stance on a ceasefire in Gaza. I mean, it really is very worrying indeed. I imagine the hospital has many questions now to answer, whether they'll investigate this particular doctor that Jess Phillips was talking about. That may well happen indeed. Cassandra says the Jess Phillips story is deeply concerning. It implies that medical treatment is now allocated on the basis of political views. Would a Jewish person be comfortable being treated by a Palestine-supporting NHS worker? Well, it shouldn't matter. They shouldn't know. You shouldn't know when you walk into a hospital what side of the fence, you know, your clinician is. It can't work like that. You can't work like that. Otherwise, people feel ostracised. She goes on to say Jess Phillips should reflect on the fact that the shows cronyism, corruption, etc., etc. Lots of you getting in touch. Please do keep your thoughts coming in on that one. It truly is a shocking story, and I'm very glad Stephanie Tetchy has brought that one to light in the Daily Mail today. As I said before, GB News have reached out to the Foundation Trust involved. We're yet to hear a response. This is Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, including whether this royal rift perhaps has been fixed between Prince William and Harry. They were seen at a funeral together, a funeral that Harry wasn't intending to show up to. More on that after this.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Michael found the recipe for success without going to university. Instead, he went looking for answers inside of a kitchen. The 22-year-old has just finished a level 2 course in professional cookery at UCB, a college in Birmingham.
When I started UCB, I was expecting it to be so intense from day one, but it's not. It sort of builds up, so to the point where you get comfortable. And building that comfort is a huge part of becoming a chef, because you need to be comfortable being in your own skin.
This week, tens of thousands of students get their A-level results. The college wants them to remember university isn't the only option after school, and West Midlands Mayor Richard Parker agrees.
University is the right route for lots of our young people, but there are other pathways to getting access to qualifications that will give young people the skills they need to succeed in life.
Further education principal Rosa Wells says apprenticeships and technical courses are also great routes to a career.
Here at University College Birmingham, we offer vocational courses. These are hands-on technical courses that can give people a different opportunity, something different to school. So we've got brilliant facilities that really give students industry standard training.
A skills shortage across the UK means youngsters learning trades are desperately needed. 36% of job vacancies are due to shortages. The Labour government's new body, Skills England, has been created to bring training providers and businesses together with local and national authorities plus unions to target trade gaps and regional requirements. Michael's now finishing his qualification. Where he goes next is down to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Right, let's finish off the show with a bit of royal news. It's 2:49. Now, the Prince of Wales and Duke of Sussex have both attended the funeral of their uncle. But apparently it wasn't the harmonious reunion many had hoped for. It's reported to have been frosty between the two of them as they sat separately and didn't talk. So this is reportedly the first time in a whole year that the pair have been seen in the same room together, and apparently it didn't go so well. Well, we're joined by former senior gardener to King Charles, Jack Stooks. Jack, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the show. Is it surprising that they didn't share any words at this funeral?
Well, you know what they like. They do keep their cards close to their chest, don't they? We've seen that very much with Harry more recently, as we have with the Prince of Wales, the Princess of Wales, when we sort of didn't know what was going on before they announced what was going on with their families. So they do keep very much to themselves.
I don't know about that, Jack. Prince Harry hasn't always kept his cards close to his chest. I mean, he's written a whole book about all of his awful experiences in the royal family.
Now, of course, granted, he did do the book. I think with that, we can surmise that what he's probably done is he wanted his side of the story to be heard. And as we've seen with the book coming out on paper, he's not adding anything more in. I don't think he wants to add any more fuel to any fires. He's come to share in saying farewell to family members and see family members. And who knows, after the event, maybe they did go back to Anmer, or maybe they went to Sandringham and have had private chats and conversations behind closed doors. But as opposed to sort of being right in front of everybody, I don't think they want the world and his wife to start sort of saying, oh, this is what they said and that's what they said. So maybe silence is better in public at the moment.
Yes, perhaps they'd prefer the headlines to say frosty, they didn't talk to each other, than they're actually to be headlines describing exactly what they said to each other. Better to stay stum. But I think that's probably wishful thinking, to think that they had a meeting separately and privately and a nice chat and a get-together. Probably, Jack.
I do hope they did. I think, you know, we all want to see the family back together to where they were when Prince Harry first met Meghan and everything was happy, and the four of them all got on fantastically well. I think that's where I think the country wants it to go back to. But I don't think we can go back. I think we can maybe go forward and try and settle some arguments that I suppose have come along. But I'm still rooting for Harry. I do wish him well, and I do hope that we can get them back to where they were in some kind of peace.
That's what I hope for, but perhaps it's a bit hopeless. I don't know. But as someone who's worked for King Charles, how do you think he's taking all of this?
I think you'll be pleased to know that Harry has come out to go and be with family at funerals. I know it's not obviously the King's family, but he was married into the family, so it is nice to see that. It's nice to see that hasn't been forgotten within both of the of his sons. So I think he'll be quite happy in that, knowing that they were at least together. And let's hope that he also meets with his father, and maybe he can mend some bridges there as well.
Yes, and the battle for the Home Office security still rages on. I think he's lost his appeal on that one, Harry has so far. But Jack Stooks, really great to speak to you, former senior gardener to King Charles, no less. Thank you very much indeed, from Gloucestershire. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching Good Afternoon Britain. I will be back with Tom in tow as well, Tom Harwood, that is. So don't go anywhere, because Martin is up next. Have a wonderful weekend.
brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey, hope you're having a good day. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. There will be plenty more fine weather to come as we go through the end of today and into tomorrow, but do watch out for some thundery showers. First off though, high pressure still firmly in control, which is why it's been so settled today, and it's why it will continue to be settled as we go through the next 12 to 24 hours for most of us. Some cloud through this afternoon, but a lot of that will actually clear away as we go through this evening and overnight, away from the southeast that is. Here we are going to see a bit more cloud pushing its way in and perhaps 1 or 2 showers developing as we head towards dawn as well. Otherwise, where we have the clear skies, it is again going to be a bit of a cool night. Temperatures perhaps holding up slightly higher than last night, but nonetheless there could be some pockets of mist and fog first thing tomorrow morning. As we go through tomorrow morning then, starting off in the southeast, and like I said, a bit more cloud here with a few showers to watch out for. A brighter picture further west, but it is going to turn cloudier later. Meanwhile, across central parts, a sunny start to the day, and similar for Northern Ireland and into northern England and across Scotland, but there will be a few pockets of mist and fog here and there. These should clear quite quickly as we go through the day because the sun does still have some decent strength behind it, even though it is going to be the last day of meteorological summer. Otherwise, as we go through the day, staying pretty sunny across the northern 2/3 of the country. Further south, a bit more cloud building, and with that